Hello, glad to see you on my channel. I really value it. And today I want to share with you a wonderful story. It's a dramatic story that will come as a total shock to everybody. It is a really amazing story. So enjoy watching it.
The time was early, only 6 in the morning, but in the village at this time the work is already in full swing. Christy soaked bread crust in boiling water for the pigs, boiled Herculean porridge with chicken necks for the dogs, and prepared fresh grass for the chickens. It's the end of June, which means it's time to harvest the first crop of cucumbers and tomatoes from the greenhouses. If everything goes as it should, they will soon have a lot of satisfied customers. Christy picked up the phone and wanted to call her husband, Vasily, to wish him a good day. He, the hard worker, left for the field at about 5 in the morning, and she didn't even have time to kiss him goodbye. And what to do? The crops wouldn't work themselves. The two of them kept a solid farm, but it was a pity that God was not in a hurry to send them many children to help them. So far, he had given only one helper, but what a helper. It was only when Christy's fingers found the right contact that she heard, "No," the young woman whispered fearfully. "It can't be. It simply could not be." She would have liked to be wrong. She would have liked to pretend that nothing was happening, but the roar of the German engine was getting closer. She would not have mistaken it for anything else. A sound so deep, so rolling, and yet so nasty at the same time. A sound she had known for 6 years. The woman immediately rushed to the barn to fetch a ladder, put it against the high gate, and nimbly climbed it. It's all true. Another treacherous invasion was in preparation, which would bring her nothing but disappointment. The return journey was difficult, for she was dizzy with excitement. Without remembering herself, the young woman rushed into the children's room. "Alarm!" Christy shouted. "Get up, Max. We must go to the forest, to the forest." "Take the cow, Mom?" frightened asked the boy in his sleep. "No time, son, no time. Get dressed and run. Follow me," said the mother. "We will retreat into the forest." She herself rushed to the kitchen to get something to eat. But how much can you gather in those seconds? She grabbed a fresh, fragrant pie, freshly baked in the evening, a piece of salted lard, and a knife. It's all right. It's enough for the first time. And then, as they say, the swan will come. The sound of a rumbling motorcycle came a little closer. It was approaching inexorably, like a rock. "Son, why are you digging?" Christy said impatiently. "Yes, I'm already here," Mommy Max answered, showing himself in the hay. The son grew up smart and obedient. As soon as his mother said the word forest, he immediately dressed appropriately. High boots, tight pants, a long-sleeved shirt with a long neck, and a hat. Don't look that the 6 years going the head works well. And there is no need to persuade to get up in the morning himself wakes up, washes himself. He's a miracle, not a son. He must not fall into the hands of the invaders, must not. At last, Christy exhaled. "Don't ask me anything, Max will run after me." "And breakfast, Mom?" asked the boy, yawning. "I'm hungry, I'm dying." "Be patient, we'll have breakfast in the forest," the woman threw over her shoulder. Running away, she turned off the gas stove and rushed outside, where she took the lids off the troughs. The pigs immediately gorged themselves on their breakfast, slurping with delight. The sight made her want a snack herself. Then Christy took the lard and pie in one hand, Max's hand in the other, and dashed for the back door. The sound of the German engine, meanwhile, was stilled and did not approach. It was hammering somewhere out there in the middle of the village. Could it be that the invaders were having trouble advancing? "Mom, what's going on?" Max asked, looking at Christy's frightened face. "Later, I'll explain later," the woman waved her hand. "You're still too young to understand everything, honey." Christy went out through the secret gate and carefully adjusted the boards that covered it. If you don't know, you won't notice. Their hut with the plot at the very edge of the village, so the murmur of a German engine could be heard long before the invaders reached their position. But if usually she waited for the approach of the rumble as inevitable, today she decided to act. Today the mistress decided to go into the woods, to hide, to wait out the trouble. And as soon as they turned the corner to go around the plot, "Where are we going?" Veronica asked, appearing as if from nowhere. "We?" Christy asked. "To the woods, to pick berries, mushrooms." "Oh, berries," whispered her mother-in-law. "Ah, mushrooms. That's how you look after my son's household. So he left you in charge of the house his son entrusted, and you for mushrooms. Well, yes, the young woman faded her eyes. As if you never go to the forest for mushrooms. You do not talk to me here. Grinned mother-in-law. You are still young to collect mushrooms like me. Aha, Christy replied defiantly. And for a motorcycle, I am also, apparently, young, Veronica. For several seconds, the old woman and the young woman looked at each other with hateful glances. The air between them was so electrified that lightning could occur at any second. The roar of the engine continued to echo somewhere far away, never approaching the house. Max was the first to come to the senses. Grandma, he said excitedly, Grandma is here. Well, we won't go to the forest now, of course. Oh, my grandson, smiled Veronica and immediately changed, as if she had put a mask on her face. Look how they starved you here. They don't feed you anything, do they? No compote to pour, no porridge to boil. Well, we'll fix that in no time. It was Christy's turn to wrinkle his brow. As all times before, the arrival of the mother-in-law was not announced and took place on the conditions of surprise. It was not easy to understand such secrecy because she lived in the village only 40 kilometers away from them. But Veronica considered herself a sort of checker. She considered it her duty to arrive unexpectedly, to find as many wrongdoings of the unhappy daughter-in-law as possible. She kept imagining that the young woman had a lover, and as soon as the lawful husband went to the field, he was there. The arguments that everyone in the village was in the palm of her hand were not taken into account. She could drive Tony crazy with her fables. You can't give him Sarsop, Christy demanded. All we did was cure his allergies and take him to doctors in the city. Do you know how many powders he had to take? So no Sorsop, Sevida, and other drinks from packets, okay. So you have time for the city, Veronica muttered unhappily, but not for the priest and the church. What better cure than sincere prayer? When the priest learns how to cure allergies, I'll go to him right away. The young woman cut her off. Once again, there was a tense silence. The engine continued to rumble somewhere in the distance, but its revolutions began to stall. Max helped the situation again. Grandma, how long will you stay with us? He asked. Will you play with me? Oh, grandson, well, lead already into the house, demanded the mother-in-law. And where is it your machine? Surprised Christy. Stuck in the middle of the village, shrugged Veronica. It is, apparently, you wanted to visit me so badly that even jinxed the technique. Before her marriage, Christy thought that all stories about rubbing between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law fictional or black humor. Could two women who love the same person really be feuding? Is it really so difficult to find a common language with a new relative? But already during the wedding it became obvious. Stories not only do not lie, but sometimes understatement. The character of Veronica was not just authoritative, but despotic. In her house, everything was supposed to agree with the mistress. Spiders the shape and size of the web. Nightingales in the vegetable garden repertoire of marriage songs. Tony, the only son of the bossy woman, suffered most of all from this character. As an 18-year-old boy, he ran away to the army, and when he came back, he described the everyday life of a private. Well, Mom, the petty officer and the company's demanding hard, but you are not up to you. Not even half. Veronica considered such a characteristic flattering and continued to demand from her son with renewed vigor. But she overdid it. At the age of 22, her Tony decided to get married and to a bride with a large dowry. In addition to sudden love, young people moved in some kind of calculation. Christisha, such a man like Tony, was vital, hardworking, inebriated, affectionate. She was suddenly orphaned, and the girl was a large house and household. And Tony urgently needed to escape from his own mother, so as not to happen irreparable. At first, she could not be pleased with the malleability of her husband and his diligence. But over time, the very pitfalls, the reason for his peace of mind. And if Christie's dowry was like in the palm of her hand hut, household, and beauty, then part of Vaja's dowry was safely hidden from human eyes. Every time she came to the house of her daughter-in-law and son, Veronica began to put things in order. All tools were used, from persuasion to threats to kill herself if something was wrong. And when her son arrived, the battle over how to raise the boy began immediately. What do you mean you are not happy to see me? Continue her interrogation mother-in-law as they walked to the house. What have you stuffed in your purse? Let me see. Christy sighed. The new relative reminded her of a witch from children's fairy tales. Only in this way to scare hapless wives. Say, you will behave badly. Unlike the canonical witch, Veronica did not fly on a broom. She had an ancient motorcycle with a German engine, and she used witchcraft to set it in motion every time she was going somewhere. I won't give it to you, said the landlady. My basket is mine and my tier. Give it to me, demanded the mother-in-law. You're probably bringing your lover another present. The women began to tear the basket from each other until the handle cracked. A piece of lard flew out and fell on the sand. Christy's mood immediately soured. Can't we wash it? No, not at all. There are all sorts of animals walking around. My mother-in-law commented. You see what you've done? You shouldn't have gotten into my basket, the young woman said resentfully. I need to know everything, was the answer. I have to check everything. Well, that's my nature. So what about the bike, Veronica? Christy asked, ignoring the barbs of her mother-in-law. Should I call Tony? It's all right. The woman waved her hand. The steering wheel stopped obeying, and for some reason the engine won't turn off. Now the fuel will burn out. He'll calm down. Let it stand there. It's bothering someone, isn't it? Tony's coming tonight. He'll tow it here to the station, dismantle it. Until he fixes it, I'll stay with you. Don't threaten me, thought Christy, but she said nothing. When she entered the house, her mother-in-law immediately rushed to check its sanitary and technical condition. Immediately fell to her knees and looked carefully at the floor and the hay. There was enough sand and dust. Ran her finger along the door-trimmed dust. Ran to the curtains' dirt on the TV set, without which it is impossible to imagine a village hut. A spider has woven a huge web. And this is the mess in which my favorite grandson and my favorite son live? Asked Veronica, clutching at her heart. You'll drive my boys to their graves with your mismanagement. Veronica, for God's sake, Christy blurted out. Don't you touch God, said her mother-in-law. How much do you know about him? You didn't even want to baptize your only son. Then she rushed into the kitchen with such speed that she could have set several regional sprint records. She carefully inspected the refrigerator, the freezer, barrels of pickles, stocks, pots and pans, and even onion husks. The next room Veronica felt obliged to look in was the bedroom. You can't go in there, Christy said sternly, standing in front of the door. So you have secrets? Whispered her mother-in-law. You hide your lover there while my son is working. I knew it, I told him. Think twice before marrying an orphan. Orphans are known to be in love. What lover? The landlady was indignant and opened the door wide. What's that got to do with my being an orphan? Tony and I hadn't made the bed, so I didn't want to show you. Look, envy me. Their family bed did indeed bear the marks of a stormy night. She and Tony were tossing and turning, not so much because of love as because of the heat. Neither the open window nor the fan helped, but Veronica's gaze immediately fell on the bedside table, where an unfamiliar object had appeared. She had never seen it before. The woman quickly ran over and took the item in her hands. The gift box had the inscription, Favorite Mother-in-Law, on it. Oh, is it for me? Shrieked Veronica, running up to the table. You're not as bad as I thought. What a surprise. I love getting presents. No, Christy waved her hands. No, put it back, please. But it was too late. As if in slow motion, she watched her mother-in-law take the box in her hands, open it, take something out of it, unwraps it, and how the expression on her face from joyful became first incomprehensible and then simply angry, because what was in the box made Veronica boil with rage and Christy blushed with shame. Driving around the huge field, Tony couldn't get excited about the new tractor. How new? Of course, the machine had plowed not 100 kilometers while it fell into his caring hands. He had to rebuild the suspension, service the engine, buy new attachments. Then, of course, he adjusted the steering, repainted, put a modern ignition system so that his tractor started easily and quickly. But now, after all that work, he felt like a true king of the fields. Nothing could distract him from his ideal, except a phone call. During the conversation, it was possible not even to muffle the engine. The interlocutor could be heard well. Tony, Christy cried into the phone. Tony, Come home quickly. We have an accident. Well, my darling, he replied, I've only done one lap. I've got 2 more hours of work to do before the sun gets high. Otherwise, we'll be left without fodder, my love. Come back, my love, my wife continued. Please, Tony, I'm waiting. The farmer wanted to ask what had happened, but the answer didn't take long. In the background, he heard the voice from which he first ran away to the army and then to a foreign village 40 kilometers away. Of course, he liked life with Christy much better than building on the formation. But if it were not for his overbearing mother, he probably would still not be in a hurry to get married, and from the military commissar would run a year or two. Sighing, Tony poked his head out of the tractor cab and looked around. There was a lot of work to do, and he wanted to get it done before the heat wave, so he could go to the wholesale store to pick up some paper boxes. Soon, very soon will go tomatoes and cucumbers only have time to remove. Buyers, wholesale, and retail will be coming to their house. What do you mean? I have to drop everything and go to calm down my mother and wife. Grown women, Tony thought. Well, they had a little fight, so who doesn't? By the time I get there, they'll be reconciled, and nothing to interfere with them, because I always get into their squabbles. I end up being the one to blame. As soon as Tony started the engine with the firm intention of working the field to the end, the call came again. This time it was his mother. Yes, I'm listening, he said, so that it was clear at once. There was no time for rocking at all. So, that's how you meet me here, came a disgruntled voice. This is how you live here. If you don't apologize right now, I'm packing my things and I won't be here anymore. If only it were that easy, thought Tony, but he didn't say anything. What's wrong, Mommy? The tractor driver asked. You know it's summertime. I've got a lot to do. But why am I telling you this? You've lived in the village all your life. You got a lot on your plate, Veronica asked. Well, come and see what your wife does here. How she amuses herself and pleases herself while you're away. I've told you 100 times. You should watch your wife like a dog. If she runs off to the neighbor's yard, you'll be in trouble. What do you mean, what does she do? Tony was surprised. Well, guess, Veronica teased him. No, you answer it. The man got angry. Off the phone, the obnoxious mother-in-law replied and hung up. Tony snorted. He dialed his mother, but she didn't answer. Then to his wife, but her phone was off. Jealousy covered the tractor driver's eyes. His mother had told him that Christy didn't love him, and that she couldn't have children except one, so it wasn't an accident either. And she's got a lover. That's it, you live and learn. Tony's love experience was a little short. He met Christy right after the army and soon they were married. There was only one woman he'd known before he met his soulmate. What was her experience, he wondered? They never discussed it. Could she really do it? Thought the tractor driver. All women are the same. Except for Mom, though. Driving through the village, he was surprised to see his mother's ancient motorcycle right in the middle of the street. It was a machine he wouldn't mistake for anything else. He saw that the bodywork was all rusty and he felt a little ashamed. After all, his mom had asked him a long time ago to go over and treat the metal. She must have left her bike out in the distance on purpose to sneak up on him in silence, Tony thought. The closer they got to home, the more the man boiled. How will they divide the child? And the joint property? After all, you can consider on the ready-made. His wife is an orphan. His father-in-law and mother-in-law died foolishly, leaving Christy all alone. Kick him out and Tony would be left with a naked torso. Pushing those thoughts away, the man left the tractor outside the gate and rushed into the house. Everything was wide open. As he ran into the hay, he saw his wife crying. Nearby, on a simple rustic chair, lay a man's underpants. Bright red ones he'd never wear in his life. Where is he? Shouted Tony, appearing on the doorstep. Where is he, Tony? There, Christy answered and waved her hand toward the bedroom. The husband grabbed this piece of clothing, not remembering himself from rage, rushed out the door. And then there was a picture of oil. Mom? Tony asked. Where's the lover? That you know, cheaters, where is the lover? Replied the old woman and began to pretend to sob. And how do you live here, that the last grandmother of your Max is ready to bring to the coffin? The man took a closer look, and the reason why his mother had lost her temper became clear to him. And Tony felt a little ashamed again. It was their little innocent prank. What fun could there be in the country? There's no time to relax in the summer. There's so much to do. One of the guests gave Max a game. It is necessary to load guns and shoot at targets to fulfill tasks. But one of the heroines on the target turned out to be his mother-in-law. To make the resemblance maximal, Christy armed herself with a brush, paints, and painted her. Now she and her husband have a ritual in the evenings to shoot the mother-in-law. They even invented a rule. One says something offensive thing in someone else's voice, and the other pulls the trigger. Yes, if she knew that Veronica was coming to visit, she would have hidden this innocent thing. So there is no lover? Asked the husband, coming out into the hay to his wife. He was scratching the back of his head thoughtfully. What? Christy was indignant. Just do not start, I beg you. Your mother has already said so much to me that I just all boiling. If there is no lover, then what is this? Tony asked, pointing at the man's underwear. These are for you. Your mom brought them, replied the wife, shrugging her shoulders. Wear them as long as you like. Tony scrutinized the underwear. Well, now he'd have to wear such a disgrace. The underpants are not only all red, but also tight. You can't wear them to the bathhouse with the men, they'll laugh. And in front of his wife, he would hardly be able to walk in such a shame. Tony sighed and went back into the bedroom to apologize to his mother. But here, Mom, why did you move our bed? He asked with surprise. Together with his wife, her house and household, he got a strange sleeping place. According to legend, such a bed was brought from Czechoslovakia by his mother-in-law, whom he had only seen in a photograph. 2 parts could be joined into one, which they did on the first night of their acquaintance. And if you wanted, it could be divided into 2 beds. You shouldn't sleep in the same bed while I'm here, Veronica explained. You'll embarrass yourselves and embarrass me. Mother, what are you doing? Tony said in an incomprehensible voice. We've been married for years, Mother. What are you doing? Shouted the woman. This is it. Ordered a picture with my face to shoot. That's why my whole body and face aches in the evenings. That's what relatives of enemies are like. You don't understand anything, Tony said. Nobody ordered you, and no one is shooting. Here's a cross for you. It's a joke, you know. You don't know how to apologize, so go get my motorcycle, my mother demanded. See what's wrong with it. I was driving, and the steering wheel failed. And the gas was gone, although the engine kept on revving. After standing in the doorway for a few seconds, the man turned and walked away. One part of his mind wanted to apologize to his mother, and the other wanted to kick her out and forbid her to come to their house forever. You'd have to make it look like Christy had a lover. He almost went crazy with jealousy and already had a divorce in his head. Good thing he didn't have time to say anything nasty to his wife. The mother-in-law slowly came out of the bedroom and looked at her daughter-in-law carefully, and what only her favorite son found in her. The figure must have once been beautiful, but when was that? Now, as a woman's taste, her ass was too much rounded, with such a rounded ass that you can't run around the house with it. Blush on her face, eyebrows tinted. Who does she work so hard for when her husband spends so much time in the field? Thought of a way out of the situation. I'm going to help my husband to roll the motorcycle, and you look after Max, found the mistress, and left the house. She shouted mother-in-law, but the shot was blank because the door had already closed. Walking through her native village, it seemed to Christy that all the villagers were laughing behind her back. Here lived hard-working and enthusiastic people. All the houses were beautiful, renovated and well. The gardens are even weeded. The fences are neat, strong, and even. The whole street came out to see Tony cleaning up his mother's faulty motorcycle. At first, rumbling like an ancient tractor, swore Lucas, in front of whose house and stuck this machine. Smoked like a battleship, and then it got stuck. It's been standing there for 2 hours without anyone caring. Don't swear, Father, we'll clean it up, Tony said cheerfully, and the villager calmed down a bit. Look, Lucas shouted with renewed vigor when he saw Christy, and threw the landlady out of the house. That's a disaster. That's a disaster. Intercepting Tony's angry look, the old man turned around and went to his hut. People here did not like to tell others how to live and what to do, and Lucas was considered a cowardly man. But there was some truth in what he said. Christy smiled, approached her husband, and asked, "Do you need any help, honey?" "No," Tony exhaled. "It's a lot of work. How did she even use it to get to our village? Black magic. No other way, his wife replied, and they both laughed. Well, magic or not, I'll have to tow it to the yard. The husband waved his hand. Now if I tightly sit down and order the parts, then tomorrow everything will be ready, and by evening we'll get her out. And when will you go for the boxes? Christy asked. She was the same as his mother-in-law, whom he had never met. She had a perfect grip on things, they said. There's a little left over from last time. Tony waved his hand. I went into the greenhouses, not much to take off there. They're plastic crates, Christy said, and her husband smiled. After all, he was lucky to have a wife. With such a thrifty and savvy woman, they will definitely build a house for his son. The two of them had a hard time fixing the old motorcycle to the tractor. The front wheel Tony securely attached to the frame, and the rear wheel rode on the ground. Then the two of them climbed into the cab and rode home. Of course, it was only a 10-minute walk, but it was so nice for Christy to spend a little more time with her soulmate. Listen, Christy, he said, taking her hand. I'll have her rumbar fixed by morning. She'll sleep over and be on her way in the morning. She's nothing but a nuisance in this house. She made me come all the way from the field. Don't worry, Tony, his wife said gently. Don't take it so hard. Of course, your mother misses her son, and she's not a bad woman, but she's too fond of order. She was very fond of her husband, and as soon as they came close to each other, her heart was immediately filled with warmth, tenderness, and a feeling of happiness. With this unearthly feeling, they instantly found themselves in their native yard. They unhooked the motorcycle from the tractor and rolled it to the garage, where Tony had a perfect order. The garage was also given to him, along with all the dowry, but the man brought the workplace to perfection. Now there was light everywhere, neat workbenches, and every detail knew its place. The mistress looked at this kingdom of screws and nuts and decided not to disturb her husband. In a minute, she was already in the hay. After the time spent with her husband, she felt very good and even wanted to sing. Christy thought that with her mother-in-law just need to talk properly to discuss and explain everything. And she will definitely go along with it, because Veronica is a smart, educated woman. There was a suspicious silence in the house, and some strange odor, as if someone was diligently scrubbing and mopping the floors. And when Christy entered her favorite bedroom, what she saw literally rendered her speechless. Her parents, who had passed away prematurely, had instilled in the young woman good taste. Her dwelling did not resemble a village house, but rather a cottage or a country house. Both the bathroom and the toilet were in a separate annex. Hot water was also in the kitchen, where her mother had made a very nice set. And Christy herself liked to watch some fashion videos on the internet and make her own jewelry or buy it. The bedroom was a point of pride. If Christy had money for a designer, she'd never give it to him. So she found beautiful pictures on the internet and reproduced them completely. Her parents had left a bed, which according to legend was a Czechoslovakian bed, and an even, snow-white ceiling, which her father had made shortly before his death. Together with her husband, they covered the walls with plasterboard sheets, hiding the electrical wiring, sockets, and switches. They leveled them as much as they could. With her own hands in several layers, Christy lovingly spackled these sheets, then pasted neat wallpaper light pink color. And on these her imagination ran wild. She drew ornaments and flowers, and when her son was 3 years old, they stenciled animals together. Both windows were decorated with massive oak windowsills. Two dear, at least to her heart, lamps appeared by the bed, which they turned on in the evenings. Gradually, the room filled with beautiful, modern furniture. The cherry on the cake was the large television that Tony had hung on the wall after some simple calculations. How nice it was for them to relax in this cozy nest. "Mom, we are playing builders," Max exclaimed. "Soon we will lay tiles." "That's great, isn't it?" Entering the bedroom, Christy tearfully looked at what was left of her favorite interior. Her mother-in-law had stripped off the last of the wallpaper using an old blunt knife. In a few places she had overdone it and punched holes in the drywall sheets. Since Veronica was not tall enough, it was difficult for her to reach the ceiling even with the help of a bench and a chair placed on it. She had to jump up and down, wielding the same knife. The result was scratches and damage to the snow-white ceiling created by her father, which had been so carefully protected from damage during the renovation. While moving her construction, my mother-in-law managed to tear the oak windowsill out of place. She hadn't realized to cover the TV, and now there were white dots on the surface. Veronica had broken one of the lamps near the bed, and so as not to make it conspicuous, she had removed both of them and put them under the bed. Christy felt dizzy, like she was going to faint. I wondered, why do you need that pink wallpaper? Why the frills? Said the mother-in-law, still wielding her blunt knife. Pale, somehow sluggish. How did you in such a bedroom? Forgive God, Max maid. No wonder nothing else works. It's okay. I've already ordered real wallpaper, orange and bright red like the dawn. So you'll always be ready for labor, defense, and conception. Christy stared silently at the stripped walls and the wooden floor stained with glue residue. The old wallpaper must have been unyielding, so Veronica had decided to wet it. She hadn't thought to cover the floor, of course. How long it would take to tidy up the bedroom after such a repair, she could only guess. But this is very expensive wallpaper. Christy was indignant. We ordered them from Italy after the wedding. What is more expensive for you? Contrast, me or some Italy? Went on the attacked mother-in-law. So no one will be born that from Italy. And it means good, real wallpaper ordered from China. Then I look upstairs and think, what is this such a sycophantic ceiling? There are good human panels. I ordered them too. Tony will install them. We'll put skirting around the perimeter, and it'll be just like a human ceiling. Paneling, the young woman shrieked. Never in my life. Why is that? The mother-in-law puffed up her cheeks. Do you know how easy it is to clean the panels? Put a damp cloth on the mop, ran a few times as new. Who am I telling this to? Have you ever cleaned your ceiling yourself? The mother-in-law and daughter-in-law stared at each other. Veronica clutched the old blunt knife so tightly in her hand, as if she were going to use it alone to attack a bear. Christy was figuring out how many years in prison you could get for murder by passion, and how to make it look more convincing. In the meantime, Tony, having diagnosed the motorcycle, came to the most disappointing conclusions. It turned out that the ancient motorcycle with a trophy engine is easier to dispose of than to try to return to service. Having written out the spare parts on a piece of newspaper, he moved towards the bedroom. There, in peace and quiet, with his wife's appetizing ass on his knee, to look for cheaper parts on the internet. But as soon as he crossed the threshold of the bedroom, "Holy Mother," whispered Tony, looking at the ruins left of his family nest, and crossed himself. What on earth is going on? Remont, Veronica said in syllables. Repair, something you should have done a long time ago, instead of waiting for the old lady to come and make it pretty. Don't you know the customs? If you can't bring a baby into the world for a long time, you need what? Repairs. But Tony seemed to have lost the ability to talk. He walked over to the oak windowsill that he had so lovingly put in its rightful place a few years ago without a single nail. How had his mother managed to tear it out? Why, it's impossible, thought the man. A man can't tear off such a thing beyond his strength. I've already ordered wallpaper, Veronica continued to chirp, as if not noticing the state of her son and his wife. And the panels are gorgeous. Richard should be here tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning? Tony asked angrily. And where do you suggest we spend the night? Where? Veronica was surprised. It means in the hay. It's chilly there at night, so you're a hardened guy. And Christy is not a proud girl. She can spend a couple of nights in the barn. I've seen it myself. You got an old bed there for one. Tony froze, trying to find the words. He felt both anger and shame, for it was his mother who had broken into their house and was trying to impose her own rules. And what a hatchet job. The most important thing is that after the wedding, help from her was not asked. He bought eggs from Glafira, 3 dozen for 100 rubles. Pork was supplied by Falmouth. Both sirloin and minced meat cost pennies. Demian was responsible for honey, Prokop for game. During the 10 years that he headed the district prosecutor's office, the role of each local resident became more and more specific. But no, she found an old woman who was bored in retirement and began to terrorize him with her letters and appeals. And it would be all right if she only wrote to him. Once she got through to the very top, they sent him a whole delegation. For 3 days he fed them, took them fishing, and showed them beautiful places in the territory under his control. They smiled at him, shook his hand. They said that they had not had such a good vacation for a long time, so hearty and pleasant. And then a week later, they sent him a scathing letter. It left the whole district without bonuses. He had already tried to deal with this old woman in different ways, badly, in good and praise, and scare all to no avail. What an old woman, Sam shouted in his heart, reading another complaint. And it's all right, she wrote to me. She could have written to me again. The active grandmother demanded a personal appointment almost every week. Of course, Sam's age was not even comparable to that of a regular client, but sometimes he had the impression that this woman was literally drinking his vitality. But nothing. Now he knew exactly how to find a solution to this woman. There was only a little bit left to do. Christy remembered the conflict of 2 years ago and regretted that she had given up quickly. That summer, Veronica decided to baptize Max. In their village, there is no church. The nearest one is 50 kilometers away. And there was a pandemic raging in the yard, so they refused to baptize him under a plausible pretext. Then the obnoxious mother-in-law pretended to die, and her last wish was to put a cross on her grandson. Then she and her husband, borrowing a neighbor's minibus, hastily organized the ceremony. They gathered guests, set the table, prepared money for the church. Even the bishop lamented that worldly rules in the health sector must be observed. God will accept and forgive everything. Max was successfully baptized, and Veronica changed her mind about dying. But now she was talking about a spiritual career for her grandson. You listen to what a voice he has, a ringing, singing, said mother-in-law. This is what kind of bishop will turn out to hear. Or how once, at the dawn of married life, they decided to do a nice thing for Veronica and congratulate her on March 8. We prepared a luxurious bouquet of flowers, as a gift a set of expensive dishes. Christy that day showed Maxim culinary talents and baked a huge cake. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, finally got to the house of my mother-in-law. All this is all well and good, of course, but, said Veronica then. What's wrong? Christy was surprised. You should have congratulated from the very morning. Cut off, mother-in-law, and you only arrived in the evening, and I don't need to. I am an old and sick man who needs peace. Having said this, mother-in-law took the cake, flowers, and a huge box of dishes and hid in her house. No matter how much Tony knocked on the door, no matter how much he blushed, his mother never let him in. Christy and Tony then left without even drinking tea, and Veronica did not even apologize for her act. Well, Richard, said Tony, the first to gather his thoughts. Thanks, as they say, for dropping by. We'll take it from here. But the man wouldn't leave. He looked at the whole company strangely and slightly ingratiatingly, stepping over ridiculously. He looked at the beautiful kitchen set or at the ceiling, but he didn't leave. The mother-in-law hid her eyes, and Christy realized that she was hiding something again. Go on, Richard, Tony repeated. You're a busy man, and we do not keep you. Or should I offer you some tea for the road? I'm sorry I'm so inhospitable. It's not about tea, Richard said quickly and continued to stare at Veronica. What is it? Tony asked. I'd like an advance, the man grunted, for building materials. Your mom ordered a whole sheet of paper for me the other day. There's wallpaper and glue and panels, and to them then are supposed to be corners and profiles. In short, 20 items. Give it to him. Veronica waved her hand nonchalantly. Give him what? The landlord asked, not even hiding his irritation. It's the beginning of summer, mother. All the money is over there, invested in the tractor and crops. Have you seen the barrels in the barn? That's the diesel I bought so I wouldn't run out of fuel at the height of the season. And there's no stash? Carelessly asked mother-in-law, ignoring the words of her son. What are you talking about, Mom? Tony hissed. He hated it when someone tried to make him look poor or stingy. Summer was in full swing. Everything was in circulation. What money? What stash? I found it while I was renovating the place, said Veronica innocently. What do you mean, a stash? A whole capital. I'd like to use it for some godly cause. It was Christy's turn to boil. Not only did this woman come into someone else's house and do her own thing, but she found their life savings, which she rushed to tell the first person she saw. Richard, watching this scene, wished he had pawned his own money for building materials. It's not a stash, the landlady said loudly. This is Max's money. He's going to grow up and we're already saving for his education. And if you, Veronica, can't keep secrets, then you should say so right away. I've never seen this man before in my life, by the way. Well, I'm going to go. That's something, said Richard, but he was immediately grabbed by the shoulder and put on a chair. Tony, don't go anywhere until it's done. He demanded. Mom, how much money do these building materials cost? Yes, pennies it means, weighed her mother-in-law. 92,000 rubles. 92, Christy exclaimed. 102, corrected Richard. That's with the discount. And I'm not counting the fuel, it's all. Little one? Tony asked her again. We went to school together, didn't we? Yes, I said she was small, nodded her mother-in-law. 25 years old, no more. I wondered who this child was having fun with. I went to the window. Well, did you? I snuck up without being seen, and I saw the prosecutor on her couch. You? Christy couldn't take it anymore. A prosecutor. Can't he have a life of his own? He's already a handsome, married man. Veronica was indignant. He should have gone home. Well, let him, the landlady waved her hand. She didn't even know what the prosecutor looked like or what his name was. And she couldn't even imagine that the official had a family of his own. And ever since then I've noticed the way he looks at me, Veronica finished in a whisper. He looks at me with hatred. There was silence at the table. Tony looked at his mother in disbelief, and Christy immediately thought that her mother-in-law was deceiving her. She had studied this duplicitous woman too well over the past years. Could it be that everything was different and the prosecutor was not really in that ill-fated house and Veronica was spreading rumors? Then it was easy to see what the man in the blue uniform didn't like. Here's the thing, Veronica, Christy said in her hostess voice. The prosecutor, of course, is a respectable man. But even he doesn't have the guts to persecute you because of such a situation, to involve the district police. Why are you sitting there, Tony? Look at you. Suddenly shouted mother-in-law. What a wife you got. So, adultery is this situation. You should be shouting about it on every corner. Cheating is not a big deal. It's a matter of national importance. And you shouted? Christy asked, ignoring the hurtful words. Did I? The mother-in-law asked again. No. This is the first time I've told you. It's a private matter after all. Unless it concerns my family, of course. Do you have any other sins? The mistress said sternly. She was beginning to like her role. Now let Veronica ask for everything herself, and she would turn up her nose. What sins are there? The mother-in-law waved her hand. Well, let's say that she was stealing, not by hundreds of lighters, but just for herself, 40 or 50 lighters. I was never caught by the hand. I dug up potatoes and carrots for my neighbor at night. Have you seen the sidewalk tiles around my house? They brought it to the local administration to finish it. So you took it out of there? Tony was surprised. 40 meters? Well, I'm on a wheelbarrow, slowly said Veronica. The statute of limitations has run out. It was 5 years ago. Then the mother-in-law continued to list her adventures, and her son's eyes rounded. He didn't know anything about his mother. He was most impressed by the story of the inscriptions on the stone house. They'd built a cottage at the end of the street, hooked up to communal gas. Someone hinted to them that it would be a good idea to reimburse some of the expenses to the villagers, but they refused. At night, an unknown person painted their expensive stone block fence and the wall of the house with obscene words. All the police were knocked down, but the culprit was never found. And he, it turns out, is sitting right here at the table. And it was she who taught me from childhood to be honest and right, thought Tony. And all this time she herself only did what little things she did to break the law. What a mommy. I won't live in the same house with a criminal, Christy said. We'll be partners in crime and Max will be all alone. And you've already put me in the criminal, huh? Mother-in-law grabbed her heart. I'm not the one the district inspector is looking for. So you go out right now, demanded the mistress of Veronica, and I need to talk to my husband. What is this, secrets? Indignant mother-in-law. There can be no secrets in my family. Get out, Mom, Tony said, and Veronica was officially outnumbered for the first time. Well, if you've been asked, you should respect it. After all, it wasn't Richard who asked, it was Christy, my wife. Her shoulders slumped and she walked away, wiping away her tears as she went. She would have liked to make another scandal, but she didn't feel strong enough after the exercise with the wallpaper. However, she did not tell the whole truth about her own exploits. But the old woman was sure that some of her most daring antics should not be told, and no one would ever know. "What do you mean? We don't know anything about your mom?" Christy was indignant. "It turns out so," agreed Tony. "I didn't know what she does when no one sees her. But we can't hand her over to the prosecutor, can we? So now your mom's going to live here all the time?" The landlady continued. "She'll change whatever she wants while we're hiding her, or she'll spend our stash, and we won't even know about it." "Christy, my love," said Tony, hugging his wife. "Be patient just a little bit. I'll hide the stash in the garage no one will ever find." "A little bit? How much?" asked the young woman. "If the police are looking for her, it could be a long time. We have to find out exactly what she's done." "Why?" Tony waved his hand. "It's my mom. What could she have done that's so bad? Let it be known to you that." There was a loud knock at the gate. Obviously an outsider. They don't do that in the village. If you want a man, shout as if you wanted to wake up a dead man. And if it doesn't work, shout twice as loud. If they're knocking so hard, they must be aliens. Maybe they're looking for a second electric meter. Maybe they're looking for moonshine. But when Christy ran out into the yard and saw the guests behind the gate, it was immediately clear to her who they came for. Veronica, sitting on the bench of the bathhouse, swallowed her tears. That's how life had turned out. Now she would not be the one to restore order, but she would be called to order. You can't make a scandal. You can't change the wallpaper. You can't add peas to the soup. It's not good. It's not good. When she heard the knock, she climbed on the bench and carefully looked out of the window. Behind the gate, literally 10 meters away from her, stood a policeman in uniform. Rural policeman is a separate kind of art. All the more or less diligent policemen quickly leave for the big cities. They build themselves apartments there, marry local women, so that their children forget what it is to live with roosters, dig potatoes, and fry lard in a frying pan. And only those who either couldn't or didn't want to remain in the villages. Archie belonged to the small third group. He just loved the village. Here he could drive a 4x4 Neva and give the impression of a tough ranger. He moved, however, according to all the rules of search science. He left his car at the edge of the village. Before approaching the gate, he walked around the perimeter of the plot. It looked like there were people in the house, but as Archie was the village policeman, he was a bit inattentive, and he didn't see the woman he was looking for. "Hello, mistress," said the young district inspector. "I apologize for the unannounced visit because we are looking for someone, and I was ordered to come to you unannounced." "Who are you looking for?" Christy was surprised. "I have only my husband and son at home, and the household, of course." "And we are looking for your mother-in-law, strangely enough," sighed the policeman, and then he looked intently at the pretty hostess. "How long have you seen her?" Two wolves began to fight inside Christy. One of them demanded that the hated Veronica be handed over to the police officer right now. And the other rightly pointed out that after such a step, family life could be cracked. Besides, there was no telling what she would say to the police and what they would do to her for it. No, there was no need to give up in a hurry. "Veronica?" Christy asked and yawned. "I see her often, Comrade Inspector, often. Even more often than I'd like." "Well, to be more specific," the policeman clarified, "do you see her right now?" "Not right now," shrugged her shoulders. "Sorry, I don't have time to talk to you. I have a farm, chickens, pigs, husband." Christy turned and walked toward the house. But no sooner had she taken 5 steps than she heard a tactful cough behind her. She turned around. "I apologize," patiently called her district officer, "but I'll check it out. At the same time, we'll find out how your farmhouse complies with the state policy. In the sphere of the fight against surrogate alcohol, you don't mind, do you? You won't hinder the servant of the state, would you?" The hostess smiled broadly. It would take a platoon of such good men to find where the devices for making moonshine were hidden. Tony didn't drink at all, and she herself could only have a drink on the occasion of a big celebration. "Come in," she waved her hand. "But my house is dirty and untidy." "We're used to it," Archie replied. He took off his cap and entered the house. He had seldom been in this village, for the people were very peaceful. But he had always wanted to visit this hut. Someone had told him it was all inside. There was a toilet, a bathroom, and even a boiler to wash your hands. He clucked his tongue. looking at such luxury. There's no mother-in-law here, Christy shrugged. I see, nodded the policeman. I just like it a lot. I have everything the old-fashioned way, a tub, a bath. But yours is beautiful. In summer, of course, it's a disadvantage. But in winter, when it's freezing outside. Christy felt herself getting sick. Raised by her parents, she preferred not to discuss such topics with strangers. And the policeman, it seemed, could give her a lecture about the closet. Fortunately, the policeman noticed the tension and stopped talking. "Hello, master," the policeman said when he saw Tony. "Hello, Archie," the man nodded. They'd met on a fishing trip together. "I'm looking for your mother," the policeman said. "Huh?" Tony asked, pretending he hadn't heard. "Your mother," I said. Archie repeated. "Fucking mother, huh? Had you seen where she is?" "Well, at home," replied the landlord. "Where else would she be?" Strange shrugged his shoulders. "And then they say she's gone, and she's nowhere to be found. And I have examined everything carefully, even the closet. Oh, they are going to repair it? That's good. That's right. Repair is a noble thing." Feeling sick to her stomach, Christy went outside. In the commotion, she had forgotten to feed the chickens and pigs. She had to go to the barn to get mixed fodder and dilute it in water. Her husband was with the policeman the whole time. They continued to discuss something passionately and moved outside. "What I don't do, it eats oil," the policeman said. "What?" and looked at the caps. Tony said in disbelief. "Caps are the first thing." "Both caps and bushings," nodded the policeman. "It's as simple as a building block." But suddenly he paused. He began to look from the owner of the house to the mistress, from master to mistress. Christy swallowed nervously. Had he noticed something? And what could they have missed? "You say you don't have Veronica." Archie stretched out. "What's this then?" His hand pointed triumphantly to the garage. Tony had already begun dissecting the ancient motorcycle to bring it back to life, but the old motorcycle was too conspicuous. All the surrounding villages must have known who was riding this museum piece. "This?" the owner of the house asked. "Well, it's a motorcycle. Why?" The policeman went inside without asking, lifted the saddle, where the creator of the rarity had provided a kind of glove compartment. He found a technical certificate with Veronica's name written on it, and some marks were made by her hand. "There," the policeman said triumphantly. "That's her iron horse. You think I won't recognize it? I don't." "She gave me the bite," Tony said casually, yawning. "She's old, she can't handle it. And if you want it, I'll give it to you at a fair price." "You'll give it to me?" The policeman was excited. He had been looking at the motorcycle for a long time. Putting the folder on the workbench, the policeman began to examine the marvel of machinery. Many native parts had been replaced either by imported or homemade. He, however, could not be frightened by this. The policeman himself liked to tinker with machinery. "Ah, what a machine!" Smacking his lips, he said. "I'd like to go fishing on such a machine. Or for mushrooms. Breathtaking." After that, the policeman began to start the motorcycle. But no way. It required a whole ritual with unscrewing and wiping the plugs, sucking fuel. Both Christy and Tony literally froze watching this activity. Suddenly, "Uncle, are you looking for my grandmother?" And I know where the grandmother, heard all present in the garage thin voice. Max was completely forgotten, despite the behavior, Tony and his mother's heart. So what if God gave her a bad temper? It wasn't easy for a woman raising 2 children alone. You wouldn't wish it on an enemy. Tony loved his wife too, but in a different way. He was just happy with her, and she gave him a son. But for his mother, love is blind, completely irrational. Therefore, when she came to detain the district police, he immediately realized, so just will not give. If he had to commit a crime for his mother's sake, he would, and everyone would understand him. When the overzealous policeman saw the motorcycle, Tony immediately realized that he had to offer it to the policeman. Even if it would run for 100 kilometers, it would give up anyway. And everything was going well until Max spoke up. He must have seen his grandmother hiding. He thought it was a game. That's when Tony decided a cop wouldn't leave home with his mom. So he slipped a power screwdriver with a long, sharp blade into his sleeve. "Max, you better go play with your toys." The head of the family grumbled unhappily, but the policeman immediately interrupted him. "You don't have to," Archie said. Why didn't you tell me you had such a bright son? He's going to tell the policeman everything. Won't you, boy? The policeman literally sat up. He slowly, with all solemnity, approached the child, looked into his clear eyes. He held out his hand, but Max did not understand this gesture of politeness at all. "Hello, boy," Archie said. "See, there's the policeman at work, like Uncle Anthony. You ever read Uncle Anthony?" "Nope." The kid shook his head. "Uncle, what's a policeman?" "I thought you were a policeman, like Robocar Poli." The police inspector laughed. He knew nothing about such a character, but he realized that modern children grow up in a completely different reality. The inspector took out of his pocket some badge he had been given at a regular meeting and put it on the boy's t-shirt. The boy blossomed. "Thank you, Uncle," Max smiled. "You see, you have a badge now too," replied the policeman. "Well, tell me." Tony swallowed nervously. He looked at his son and made some facial movements with his eyebrows and mouth. The policeman couldn't see this because he was standing with his back to the owner of the house. And if he had known what he was clutching in his hand, he would have been wary. "Daddy, are you ill?" the boy asked fearfully, watching his father's face. No, son," Tony replied. "I'm fine. It's just that I'm wondering, how can you know where Grandma is?" "How could I?" The child was surprised. "I'm already 6 years old. Can't I know such things?" Yes, interrupted the father of the district police officer. "Children sometimes know more than adults and share information more willingly. Come on, tell me where your grandmother is." "I object," Christy screamed at me. "This is a child, and you have no right to question him." "I'm not questioning him," the policeman. "He came up to me and said, 'I'll tell you where Grandma is.' Right, kid?" "Right." The boy was happy. "So talk already," smiled the policeman. "Come on, son, we are listening attentively." There was complete silence in the garage. The policeman looked at the child, anticipating how he was about to give the woman away. That Veronica. All her life she complained about others, and now they come for her. Tony carefully took out a power screwdriver and held it in his hand with a stop. He pulled it back so he could stab the precinct officer. Christy saw what her husband was about to do and averted her eyes. Only Max, because of his age, didn't see anything wrong. He was having fun. Adults in their games. He took in a lungful of air and smiled. "And my grandmother is at home," the child said. "In her village. She left the motorcycle with my dad and went away. That's it." "You," said the policeman and was about to swear, but he remembered that there was a child here, and he was a man in authority, almost like Uncle Anthony. He had to hold back. Tony exhaled and carefully placed the screwdriver on the workbench. His hands were trembling. What a thing to do, thought the head of the household. Almost killed Archie. Christy stood with a silly smile. In her head, she had already escorted her husband to eternal settlement for assaulting a policeman. Got around, thought the girl. "That's it, I'm leaving," Archie said. "You've been making a fool out of me for an hour. Oh, and you've put the kid up to it." "We didn't put anyone up to it," Tony justified himself. "I told you right away that she's gone. And keep the bike." The policeman kept cursing. "You're offering me a piece of junk like that. Aren't you ashamed of yourself, sir?" Continuing his tirade, the policeman closed the gate, got into the Neva, and drove away. There was a tense silence. Tony leaned on the workbench with both hands, thinking that he had almost taken the life of an innocent man. And because of whom? Because of his mother. When the noise of the service Nineveh quieted down, the door to the bat house ajar. First, the mother-in-law poked her eye into the gap. Then she opened a little wider and stuck out her hand with a mirror. Like a commando, she scrutinized the yard. No one. Tony and Christy watched these strange movements in bewilderment. Finally, the door opened and the woman revealed herself in one piece. Ducking to the ground, she quickly ran into the garage, closed the door, and stroked Max's head. "Wow, you're a ninja, Grandma," the boy said admiringly. He loved the games his grandmother played. "What a clever grandson I have," laughed Veronica. "I'm the one who encouraged him to go out and say everything." "You didn't think of that at all, did you?" "Stupid kids. They decided to hide Granny. If they're going to hide her, they have to think of everything, down to the smallest detail." As it turned out, she put the right words in her grandson's mouth, and she sent her grandson to meet the policeman herself. As she continued to extol her tactics and strategy, She had already gotten to the point where Christy herself wanted to hand her over to law enforcers. Only my strategic mind allowed me to avoid, the mother-in-law said, pointing her finger at her daughter-in-law. I'm sorry, sweetheart, but you have the brain of a chicken. The same chickens that you feed with grass. If we decided to hide it, we should have discussed everything, invented a secret language, and not only. Christy gulped for air, offended. What does this woman do? Not only has she done something wrong, she's trying to turn the whole family against herself. And Max doesn't understand a thing. Mom, what are you doing? Tony was indignant. Why are you insulting Christy, huh? I almost let Archie's guts out because of you. You would have been right, Veronica said, her lips tightening. Why did he want to detain me? The police officer who would be able to hold me accountable hadn't grown up yet. He has not grown up and will not grow up. Mother-in-law went into a frenzy and began to tell how the entire district offices danced to her tune. That the authority of a woman is unquestionable, and it must be obeyed. It turned out that Veronica was almost a great cardinal of all the surrounding villages. I'm going to bed, Christy said and took Max's hand. Let's go to rest now, little one. I'll read you a bedtime story. And macaroni and eggs, demanded the son. Macaroni and eggs are very much wanted, Mom. Together they walked out the door. Tony thought about how lucky he was to have a wife. How does she keep her cool? You're so uncultured. The mother-in-law was indignant. Even to the end did not listen to how 10 years ago I solved the crime. Well, since she left you, son, listen, and listen carefully. If I die, who will tell you such interesting stories? Christy woke up in the hay and struggled to stretch her back. It was too damp to sleep in their bedroom, and the lack of wallpaper was unimpressive. Tony had gone to sleep in his own garage on the pretense that he had to get up early in the morning anyway. So the weather is great today, and it's time to pick cucumbers and tomatoes in the greenhouses. Max is still asleep, Christy said aloud. Then I can do the chores. I'll pick some 5 boxes. I'll post pictures for people to see. And I need to price how much to sell. Taking plastic boxes, the young woman went to the vegetable garden. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. Max would be asleep for at least another hour. And with him, if he was lucky, the obnoxious mother-in-law. She'd been put in her son's room on purpose, so she'd be less likely to be discovered if someone came looking for her. But when Christy arrived at the greenhouses, she was outraged. There was no telling how many hours her mother-in-law had been there. During this time, the woman had managed to collect a huge amount of cucumbers and tomatoes. She had even taken a swing at the holy peppers, although the bushes had only just begun to bear small fruits. What are you? Asked Christy in a voice shaking with excitement. What are you doing here? Am I old and useless? Veronica asked. Here, I thought I'd help. Look, I've already harvested almost all the crops. Now we'll ask Vasca. He'll run to town. He'll get some jars and lids and we'll start rolling them up with you. Isn't that great? Are you out of your mind? My daughter-in-law screamed. It's not for us. It's for sale. And you have to take them off gradually, only ripe ones. And look what you've done. Who's going to buy it? Most of the cucumbers, which threw directly on the ground mother-in-law, were tiny, the size of a little finger or index finger. They need 2 or 3 more days to ripen. And tomatoes? She took them without picking them apart. Green ones, barely red. She plucked them right off the branches, some of them damaged. Christy knew from experience that many tomatoes were not ripe. You don't have to sell anything, Veronica replied calmly. Where does it seem that the crops from their own vegetable garden sold? What do you buy with that money? A tractor, toys, food. Christy answered her. What have you done? We're not going to get any more customers. I've already booked this place for 2 weeks. What have you done, Veronica? The young woman looked around the greenhouse in confusion. No, it would be at least a week, if not 10 days, before the new cucumbers would be ready. She immediately rushed to the second greenhouse. Fortunately, the ubiquitous hands of the obnoxious mother-in-law had not had time to get here. But she was already standing at the entrance, kneading her fingers. Go away, Christy demanded. Get out before you regret it. This is our bread, don't you understand? My parents have been growing cucumbers and tomatoes all their lives. I learned how to plant seedlings before I could walk. You didn't save your parents, Veronica said, coming inside. You burned them to death. I did. And now you want to kill me too. And my little boy with me. Of course he'll go away, you'll be relieved. Go away, don't disturb me. See what kind of working mood I'm in today. And then I'll make some rolls. Oh, and if you don't want to eat them, that's okay. I'll take them to my house, then I'll eat them all winter and treat my neighbors. Oh, so that's what it is, Christy guessed. This year you were too lazy to plant your own seedlings, so aimed at ours. That's the last time I'm gonna tell you to go away. I'm not responsible for myself. Go away, go away, go away. And what will you do to me? Mocking mother-in-law said, stretching her lips. What, will you complain to your husband? So you understand, on my side completely and completely. And if you behave badly, I'll tell Max everything. Let him know what a naughty and insolent mother he has there. When he's older, he won't respect you at all. I'll get a cell phone, calmly replied the daughter-in-law and really took out a receiver from her pocket. I'll get the phone, I'll get the phone. Veronica mocked her. And what, will you make a movie for this tic-tac of yours? Come on now. And I'll call the police together with the prosecutor, finished the hostess calmly. She was pleased to see the change in her mother-in-law's face. She turned pale, and then she turned red. For a while she just smacked her lips soundlessly. Then she took a step back, wiped the sweat from her forehead. She looked carefully at her daughter-in-law. Oh, it's hot here in the greenhouse, she said and went outside. The woman began to wrap a towel around herself and then poured a bucket of cold water on her head. Christy followed her out, closed the surviving greenhouse and returned to the one where her mother-in-law had already done her chores. She began to put more or less large cucumbers and juiced tomatoes into boxes. Of course, it was a lot, but it would do. Now she'll text a fence on Viber and he'll come and get them. At least at what price? Because with helpers like that, we could go to hell. Christy waved her hand toward the rest of the pile. You can roll this stuff up. You can find jars and lids in my closet. Just be careful not to damage anything. If you make any repairs in my kitchen or anything else, I'll call the police. Right away, Veronica said, but really started picking cucumbers and tomatoes. After an hour or two, order was restored in the greenhouse. She tended to the damaged plants as best she could, put the harvested cucumbers and tomatoes into baskets, sprinkled them with water, and put them in the shade. John, the fence sitter, texted to say he'd be here tonight, and some of the regulars responded. No big deal. He'd sell everything and put the money away. Now we could have a bite to eat. Christy hadn't had a poppy seed in her mouth since morning. But when the young woman went into the kitchen and saw her mother-in-law pickling vegetables, everything inside her turned upside down. In the city, children grow up weak and helpless. Some, even at the age of 16, cannot even make a bed or cook themselves a meal. From the excess of free time are engaged in nonsense, smoking vape, record useless videos, and then for a long time cannot find a place in life. Suffer from depression and moping. In the village is different. Here a child must grow up quickly because no one will spend a lot of time on him. And Christy had long ago gotten used to the fact that Max, even though he was only 6 years old, was already considered a full-fledged member of the family. She liked that light in his eyes when he watched his family, and whatever his parents were doing, he was there to help them. They plant potatoes, he is right there, counting out with his little foot the place in the furrow to throw the tubers. They make dumplings, and the boy has already washed his hands and puts minced meat on the dough. Shoveling snow, Max takes the smallest shovel and also shovels away the drifts. But what the mother-in-law came up with resembled a sophisticated form of torture. God only knew how the boy hadn't been burned yet. Slowly, almost breathlessly, Christy crept up to her child. That's it, hold another jar, Veronica commanded. It's not warm yet. She put 2 thick oven mitts on the boy and made him hold the jars over the gas burner where the water was boiling. The oven mitts were dry and could burst into flames at any moment. Max, Christy whispered, put the jar carefully on the table. What's that for, Mom? The boy was surprised. Put it down, the young woman demanded. Max shrugged his shoulders, took his hands off the kettle spout, and really put the hot jar. Go play with the cars for now, Christy asked in as calm a voice as possible. As soon as the child came out, she grabbed her mother-in-law by the clothes, not remembering herself from rage. What on earth are you doing? She screamed. Do you want to deprive your only grandson of his hands? Oh, stop it. Veronica waved her hand. Stop it, I'm telling you. Her eyes darkened. At that moment, the woman became really scared. She suddenly thought that all her fears about her daughter-in-law were real, and this girl with rounded hips could really strangle her. But her grip suddenly became weak, and there was a strange sound. There was a loud knock on the wicket, and the mother-in-law immediately began to look for a place to hide. At once she rushed to the cellar, but she was afraid to climb down in case her daughter-in-law would push her down and cover it with a lid. Then she went back to the kitchen, where she was going to hide in the cupboard. But there were so many jars and drawers in it that cleaning them would take 20 minutes, no less. Finally, the mother-in-law rushed into the nursery and crawled under the bed. Don't worry, Christy said after watching all that movement. What's not to worry about? Replied the mother-in-law from somewhere inside. It's not you, it's me the prosecutor is looking for. It's me who brought me wallpaper, the young woman carelessly replied and went to meet the guest. Yesterday, she had shared her misfortune with Maria, a former townswoman who had fled to the countryside. She said she was doing some work right out of the hut, but Christy did not go into it much. But Maria had cheered her up by telling her that she had 5 tubes of her favorite soft pink wallpaper left. Tony was to bring the glue this afternoon. Veronica splashed her hands when she saw the wallpaper. It's a disgusting color. Don't you dare put that in my bedroom. It's not for you, Christy explained patiently. It's for us. The landlady was happy that she had gotten such great wallpaper at a ridiculous price. Only 5 kilograms of cucumbers and 2 tomatoes. Maria was also pleased, saying she would be sure to promote their vegetables. Christy spent the rest of the day in the bedroom, gluing wallpaper and painting the ceiling. She also taught Max how to do it. First, you have to put some oil on the wall, and then put a piece on, the young woman explained. Who are you listening to? Veronica said under her arm. You have to put glue on it right away and properly. Come on, I'll teach you. Veronica, go your own way, replied Christy, or you know what will happen. Even though the room smelled of glue and was hot, she went to bed with her husband. She moved the beds properly and kept him awake until he made her happy, 3 times in a row. The prosecutor sat in the sauna and wondered where that grandmother could have disappeared to. That's how it is with any object. If it's not needed, it's always lying around. You step over it, it catches your eye. As soon as it's needed, it's gone. Maybe something happened to her. Here he is, the secretary shouted from behind the door. Invite him in, Sam said. A sauna at the DA's office is a first. It was good that his idea was approved upstairs. After all, a sauna is tradition, cleanliness, health. Of course, it was necessary to maintain the honor of the uniform, because in such a steam room could easily put a hidden camera. That's why here prosecutors were only and exclusively concerned with health. And if some beauty was to stroke a lade, there was another bathhouse for that, checked and firmly hidden from prying eyes. The door opened and his colleague, the local police chief, entered the sauna. He was in such a hurry that he had forgotten to take off his cap. You were summoned, comrade prosecutor, the colleague said. You were called, sit down. Sam waved his hand nonchalantly. Well, shall we refill it? Yes, slowly, nodded the policeman. The prosecutor began to toss the water gently onto the stones. The sauna instantly turned into a Russian sauna. Sam took 2 brooms off the wall and began to hammer them at the policeman with gusto. That's for red tape, thought the prosecutor. This is for lack of due process. And this is for... That's it, shouted the police chief and ran out of the steam room. The prosecutor beat himself a little more with a broom, just for decency, and got out too. There's kvass in the restroom. The police chief had tried his best. Fresh drink, recently brewed. It was the best after a bath. Together they came to their senses. Their skin turned pink. Their thoughts became clearer. Well, the prosecutor asked, did you find her for me? I have news, replied the chief of the ROVD and smiled. Only this, Sam. Can you tell me why you needed her? Patience, dear, said the prosecutor seriously. You realize in whose hands is the full procedural power. You'll find out everything. Just give me a deadline. Well, then listen, Sam, said the policeman and began to fantasize to justify his own slowness. Life at Christy and Tony's house gradually returned to a calm routine. The mother-in-law still continued her nonsense. Relieve gas, and if you hadn't eaten it, your gas wouldn't have gone anywhere. Second, it's cheap. 3, honey, son, where's your wife going? She just got in the house. But Tony was so used to turning off his mind while listening to his mother's musings that he didn't even hear her question. It was only when she repeated it several times that the meaning of her words began to sink in. Christy, he asked again. There was no telling where she might have gone. Maybe to feed the chickens, maybe to pick tomatoes. She's the boss, Mom. No, she's not, Veronica said indignantly. And if she wants to get up from the table, she has to ask permission, either from her husband or from the next in line. Me, that is. What an ill-mannered girl. Stop it, Mom, Tony said, and suddenly threw the spoon on the table. Stop it, I'm sick of it. What kind of mutiny is this on the family dinghy? Asked mother-in-law and stood up. That's how I raised you. Ungrateful brat, who covers his own mother's mouth. Veronica drew in a lungful of air to vent her righteous anger, but suddenly she heard the knocking of the gate. The woman rushed to the window and was dumbfounded. Here, come in, Christy said, letting a whole delegation of law enforcers into her station. Come on in. She's been waiting for you for a long time already, even prepared holiday soup. Soup? The district attorney interjected. She is good, but with lard? Linton, the hostess, upset him. Well, it's no trouble, hastened to reassure him the chief of the police department. I have my own lard. Everyone thought that he was ironizing his figure, but the policeman was not joking. He took out of his briefcase a salted lard in a transparent bag. The chief of the local fire brigade, who was trailing the procession, laughed as he observed his colleague's frugality. The whole procession was already moving towards the house. Hide me, son, hide me, Veronica said in horror. No, Mont shook his head. There was a slight clamor for a while Christy put plates and neat flutes on the table. The young woman knew that such high guests would definitely want to drink a shot. So, in order not to make a mess, she took out a bottle of good vodka from the freezer and poured it into a decanter. The walls immediately fogged up. Then she took out of the fridge a meat cut, which she had secretly made at 6 in the morning, and covered it with a napkin. They drank one of each. Sam grunted contentedly, sniffed a piece of sausage, and went for the bag he brought with him. The mother-in-law was frozen to her chair and couldn't even move. The plate of lean soup that she had praised a few minutes ago was hopelessly cold. Veronica, I asked the district attorney to bring you here, the prosecutor said, coughing, to present you with a commendation and a valuable gift in a solemn atmosphere. But as it happens, that's right, nodded the chief of the police department and winked at his mother-in-law. I sent the most experienced one. So she led him by the nose. She thought we wanted to detain her. Can you imagine? Oh, Veronica, what an agent we have. Well, what do I think? If she wants to be rewarded, she'll show up. And she did, didn't she? So you want to reward me? Veronica whispered in a hushed voice. Yes, said the prosecutor seriously. You write a lot of appeals, you send us statements often, like the letter carrier. And here, can you imagine? One very aptly shot. We went to check the local enterprise and there was just a dozen calves the engineer prepared for theft. What a cheeky bastard. Is this the one where I complained that the cows had trampled all the grass? Veronica asked, and asked the state to put soft slippers on their feet. Exactly, nodded the chief of the police department. Well, what can you do? Cows are animals that can trample us. But therefore, we caught the criminal by surprise, and therefore we are grateful to you, dear. Ah, added the chief fire inspector. So he tied them together with what? Fire hoses, and we recently lost 5 of them. Anyway, I give you a standing ovation for your attentiveness. Veronica's blotchy. The distinguished guests finished their vodka, finished the slices, and the prosecutor even tasted the leeks. But apparently, such high cuisine was not for him. As soon as he tasted a spoonful, he immediately changed his face. Well, it's time to do the honors, Sam said. We still have work to do, and the driver is waiting. Let's make a deal, Veronica. If anything happens, you call first. You don't have to make any appeals. For you? The woman shone. Of course I'll do it. Not to me, the prosecutor cut her off. To the assistant or a secretary. Well, if they don't make it clear to you, then I will. Well, mistress, Thank you for your hospitality. That honor is ours. The door closed, and Tony exhaled. All those anxious minutes he had worried that the delegation would go to the garage and find that his tractor was not registered anywhere. But it wasn't. What a clever wife God had sent him. And vodka and slices, now the district prosecutor will definitely help him if something happens. Thank God, wailed Veronica, gathering her things. Thank God that I am no longer a prisoner of this house. Ungrateful. Only Max loves and respects me here. Only him. But the grandson sat frowning. He had only recently learned that his grandmother's cutlets also contained meat, as his father had carefully told him. But all his life, Grandma Vera had convinced him otherwise. I'm leaving, she said. So be it. If I want to come and visit, I'll let you know.
One of Salima's strengths was determination. A rural girl who grew up in a large family, almost from early childhood learned, buns do not grow on trees, and a person's life will be as he creates it. Unless, of course, the man was not born with a golden spoon in his mouth. The girl realized that all the benefits of the earth, no one will bring her on a platter. Besides Selena, there were 3 other children in the family, which means that she would have to sweat. Well, she was ready, and school for her was the first step to success, which Selena will certainly achieve. It couldn't be otherwise. After all, she had a dream. And Selena was also very beautiful. The girl drew attention to herself gorgeous brown curls, which she arranged in a high hairstyle, huge greenish blue eyes framed by long thick eyelashes, and a beautiful pattern of lips. She drives so many boys crazy. Shook his head at his alcoholic neighbor, Frank, a man of indeterminate age. Oh, I wish I was younger. Frank, go to bed. Sarah, the girl's mother, said one day, don't talk nonsense. How could it be nonsense? The neighbor laughed. It's the truth. Selena herself was calm about her beauty. When she, a 16-year-old girl, was told about future success from the outside, Selena laughed. Everything can be. Only first, it would be good to get an education, and then already think about love. The Walker family was one of the wealthiest in town. Mickey and Amanda had a successful family business, a chain of hotels and 2 restaurants. Their only son, Mark, grew up in love and prosperity. The boy never knew any rejection. All his wants were fulfilled at the snap of fingers, and as a consequence, Mark grew up spoiled. The boy grew up, did well in sports, was handsome and the soul of the company. Girls hung on Mark bunches of girls, and the grown-up offspring of the Walker couple did not know what a refusal from the opposite sex. Walker will persuade anyone, with respect and envy, said friends, and Mark shrugged his shoulders modestly. From the outside, it seemed that this handsome brunette with searing brown eyes does not give importance to his attractiveness or success with girls. That was true, but Mark had never boasted about it. But he did. No wonder. Mark was a long-awaited child, born when Amanda was desperate to be a mother after 3 years of marriage. So Mark was forgiven for everything from painted wallpaper to a broken, expensive floor vase. So, universal admiration was his element. It must be said, Mark Walker was not devoid of romanticism. He knew how to court beautifully, knew a lot about girls, and, in addition, was able to find merits in any pretty girl. When Mark studied in the first year of university, there were rumors that he had an affair with a married secretary of the dean. Whether it was in fact, the story was silent. Mark preferred to keep all his numerous affairs a secret, and this could not but add to the score. Student weddings were not uncommon, but Mark had long ago decided for himself that he would first get an education, work for 3 years, and only then think about starting a family. Elizabeth longed for rural life. She was born in the village, but when she got married, she moved to the city. After graduating from the Pedagogical Institute, Elizabeth got a job as a methodologist in an orphanage, where she worked until her retirement. And when she retired, she realized that she was drawn to the village. It all started with an invitation from an old friend, Veronica, who lived in the village. Her friend had a large vegetable garden, a well-kept garden, and a household. Elizabeth visited her friend for a month, and she terribly did not want to leave. When her son asked her how she had rested, the old woman exclaimed, "Divine, Mickey, just divine." Mickey looked at his mother carefully and noted that she looked even better. Elizabeth had recently buried her husband and seemed to have aged 10 years. Even the plants smelled different there, the old woman continued enthusiastically. You can really smell the aroma. Not like here, everything is somehow inanimate. And the smell of cut grass is something unreal. While I was living in the city, I had already forgotten what it is. I think I know what to give her on her anniversary, thought the general director of the hotel chain with a smile. And 3 months later, on her 65th birthday, Elizaveta received the keys to a rural house. The house is already furnished and equipped with all the necessary communications, so Mom, own it, said Mickey with a smile, kissing the Jubilee on the cheek. I hope you'll invite us over for New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve? Yes, of course, my dears, replied the old woman with a smile, and tears glistened in her eyes. Thank you very much. You haven't seen the house yet, Mark exclaimed. It's like a real little house from a fairy tale. Really, Mom? Look at the photo, suggested the son, taking out his smartphone. What a beauty! I gazed Elizabeth, looking at the photo of the future property in different angles. Indeed, a Tarek. So we will celebrate the new year in a little house. It only remains to decide who is a mouse, and who is a frog, and who is a frog, and who is a quack, summed up the grandson, and everyone laughed. Let someone not crush our little house, Mickey said cheerfully. Let him try, exclaimed Mark. The jubilee with the family went on as usual. Elizabeth was already mentally living in the village. The old woman imagined what she would plant in the garden, and there would definitely be a lot of flowers. In early summer, her yard will be fragrant with the aromas of lilacs and irises, and she will plant roses, violets, lilies, peonies, cosmos, rudbeckia, in general, many different flowers. And no newfangled landscape design, only a lawn with thick, soft grass, on which it was so pleasant to sit. Dreaming, old fool, she reproached herself cheerfully. Don't say gop before you jump, Elizabeth. Well, you've always been a rational person, an intelligent woman after all. But no exhortation helped. And why should they? After all, the old woman knew that everything would be exactly as she imagined. Unlike many people of her age, Elizabeth was not afraid of change. There was a little more than a month left until the new year, which means that it is worth hurrying with the move. After all, it was necessary to prepare for the first family celebration in the new house. Elizabeth, she heard, and waking up from her reverie, realized that they had been trying to call her for a long time without success. Ah, she answered the culprit of the celebration. Thank God, Amanda laughed, and we thought you were somewhere else in the world. No, my dear, smiled her mother-in-law. I am here with you. When Selena went to the last grade, the school conducted a questionnaire for career guidance. To the question, what do you dream of? Selena answered without hesitation that she wanted to open her own restaurant. The next day, Maria, the class teacher, said in front of all the people, I didn't expect this from anyone, but from you, Selena. What's the matter? Selena asked, perplexed, wondering what she could have done. When asked about your dream, you said that you wanted to open a restaurant, right? Well, yes, she confirmed. You've always seemed like a reasonable person to me, and suddenly a restaurant. What's wrong with dreaming of having your own restaurant? Selena smiled involuntarily, completely confused. Well, at least that any dream should come from real possibilities, said the class teacher. However, the student was not confused at all. Maria, let me disagree with you, Selena smiled again. A dream is a dream, and it comes, first of all, from the wishes of a person. And his capabilities are another thing. But I think that if a person wants something very much, he will definitely achieve it, because a dream is a stimulus. There was silence in the class. Classmates listened to Selena with respect, realizing that they would not have been able to respond as worthily to this ranting loser. She wanted to humiliate a girl from a large and far from wealthy family, but she attacked the wrong one. Perhaps the loser would have thought of an argument to get even, but then the bell rang, and the 11th graders immediately jumped up from their seats. You got her good, her friend Jenny said approvingly to Selena. You know, I actually feel sorry for her, she sighed. Well, what does she have? No family, no kids, and not a young age. And here we are with our ambitious dreams. But we have our whole life ahead of us. And she has? But it's not your fault, she said. That's true too, Selena nodded. But it doesn't change anything. Oh, Selena, Jenny laughed. Are you sure you want to open a restaurant? You should study psychology. I'll think about it, Selena laughed. But right now, my dream is a restaurant. And you're gonna be the manager. You got it. I'll take your word for it. That's right, Selena wagged her finger. So to the Food Institute. Selena, as befits a child from a large family, learned to cook as a first grader, Her parents worked, then took Ivan and Veronica out of kindergarten, so dinner for the whole family was Selena's responsibility. And closer to the 5th grade, she realized that she really liked cooking. Even then, Selena knew for sure that her profession would be connected with cooking. Dreams about the profession of a chef were replaced by dreams of a career as a chef in some cool restaurant. And so, by her senior year, she decided that she would own a nice, cozy restaurant with a fountain in the center of the room and live music. Selena knew it wouldn't be easy. Well, so she was not looking for easy ways. After the New Year holidays, Selena found out the conditions of admission to the Regional Institute of Food Industry, enrolled in preparatory courses, and now very much studied. She rejected invitations to discos without any regret, and on birthdays, if she came, then not for a long time. Selena purposefully went to her dream, and entertainment will not run away. What are her years? The efforts of a determined girl were more than rewarded. After learning that she became a student at the Institute of Food Industry, Selena felt like the happiest person in the world. She had done it, and it was the second step towards her dream. Of course, there were 5 whole years of studying to be done. So what? So what if it's 5 years? If you study and don't be lazy, they'll fly by. The session is the hottest time for a student. But Selena, having received 4 automatic, reduced her employment to a minimum, which allowed her to celebrate the New Year not at the dormitory, but at home, in the circle of a large and friendly family. It was very convenient. After all, in the coming year, her older brother Ethan, with whom they were yearlings, fell under the spring draft. So it was God's will that they should come home for New Year's Eve. After celebrating New Year's Eve with her parents, sister Veronica, brothers Ethan and Evan, Selena went to visit her classmate Candy. The whole class was gathered. She was touching up her lipstick when there was a knock on the door. Jenny stood on the doorstep, dressed in a shiny blue dress. On her friend's head was a headband with horns decorated with tinsel. "Happy New Year! Happy New Year!" The girl cheerfully congratulated Selena's family. "Happy New Year, Jenny," Sarah smiled. "My goodness, it's not cold in such thin tights." "Nope." The girl shook her head. "Maybe you'll have some champagne." "With pleasure, Aunt Sarah." "Help yourself, have some chicken. Cold cake with horseradish," offered the landlady. "Selena, bring me a clean plate." "Oh no." Jenny waved her hands in feigned horror. "I'm already full." "No offense. You know, at other times I would have loved to eat your cold cock." "I know," laughed Sarah, pouring her daughter's friend some cold champagne. "How are you doing?" "I'm doing just fine," the girl replied. "I'm living, studying to be a secretary, preparing to become a manager in a restaurant." "Great program," approved the woman. "Mom, can we take some food with us?" Selena asked. "Of course we can." "I've always been jealous of you," Jenny admitted, as the girls left the house and headed for a classmate who lived on the next street. "Why is that?" asked Selena with a chuckle. "You have such a big and friendly family. And as long as I remember you, there were no serious conflicts in your family and in general." "Well, not really," she said, proud of her family in her heart. "Well, at least I don't remember that," Jenny smiled. "I don't think anyone in your family is capable of swearing." That's true. Conflict and confrontation were not in Selena's family. There was love, mutual respect, and gratitude for each other. What is resentment, anger, frustration, and other negative emotions? None of Selena did not remember. "Well, it's probably more obvious from the outside," Selena replied evasively. "Oh, did the Kurikins acquire a Jeep or what?" The girls passed by a beautiful wooden house with unusual carved shutters, just like in a fairy tale. "You have fallen behind the life in your province," grinned her friend. "The Kurikins moved to the city. Now there is an intelligent and very nice old woman living here, and the Jeep is probably a relative's. Listen, there was a boy who came here. He's so cute. He's so. Man, I can't even find the words. Not like our penthouse boys." "You say pentids too," Selena laughed, "as if we don't have nice, good-looking guys here." "There are," Jenny nodded, "and good ones and good-looking ones, but not eagles. And this guy has such a cool sports car. Lucky for the one he's driving." "How picky you are," Selena exclaimed. "But it's not the cars that make you happy. You can't even dream anymore." She suddenly remembered the conversation with the class teacher about the dream, and she asked how she was doing. "Everything is the same. She should be nicer to people, and everything would change," Jenny said, and Selena couldn't agree more. As they talked, they reached Candy's house. The parents of the classmates celebrated New Year's Eve at their relative's house, and the house was at the full disposal of the young people. The house was playing loud music, and the table was bursting with treats, which were left by Luba's ancestors, and even the guests brought them. After the party, it was unanimously decided to go to the club, where the villagers were waiting for the New Year's program and disco until the morning. Selena had no idea that this New Year's holiday would become for her a kind of epilogue to her love story. "Well, what am I going to do there, in this village?" whined Mark, when his father announced his decision to go to Elizabeth for New Year's Eve. "Maybe I'll stay in town and hang out with my friends." "You'll definitely hang out," Mickey nodded. "The holidays are long, but we promised Grandma we'd come for New Year's Eve." Mark grinned, remembering how his father had practically begged his grandmother for a New Year's Eve invitation, but hadn't said anything. Grandma was sacred, and New Year's Eve in a rural setting. Well, there was something to it. A little variety wouldn't hurt, except Victoria. "What's the problem?" Mickey was surprised when his son voiced the problem. "You could invite her along, if she agrees, of course." "And if she doesn't?" Mark asked reasonably. "Then you should ask first." To Mark's great surprise, Victoria agreed. "And indeed," she said, "what's wrong with these clubs? What haven't we seen there? You really don't mind, do you?" "Well, why should I mind?" the girl asked with a grin. "I think it's going to be an exciting New Year's Eve." The walkers picked up Victoria, and Mark called her. "Come up to my place," the girl asked. "What's that for?" Mark was surprised. "What do you mean, why? I have 3 suitcases." "Victoria, what suitcases?" he asked, barely containing his laughter. "We're only going for 3 days." "What's the matter?" Amanda asked. "Victoria asked me to come up and help her carry the suitcases." "Oh, gods," her mother moaned, and it was easy to see from her look that she was not happy about something. "Amanda, be lenient." Mickey smiled, catching her mood. "The girl wants to impress our son. I think it's quite normal." "And us too," Amanda nodded. "That too. Come on, honey, don't frown. It doesn't suit you." The young men walked out of the entryway. Mark had a suitcase in each of their hands, and Victoria was rolling the third. Amanda shook her head, and Mickey only hummed cheerfully. "So, shall we hit the road?" he asked cheerfully. Everyone nodded. "The air really is fantastic," Amanda exclaimed as they got out of the car. "I can't argue with that," said her husband. "It smells like watermelon." Elizabeth came out to meet them, and everyone gasped. "Grandma, you are getting younger before your eyes," Mark said approvingly. "Tell me, what's the secret?" "What secret is there?" She waved her hand. "Fresh air, that's the secret." "Well, and I do not sit idly by." Elizabeth circled the yard and boasted. "See how the yard is cleaned? I did it all myself." "Come on," my son didn't believe me. "So much for okay," the woman laughed. "Well, enough of this nonsense. Let's go inside." The house was warm, cozy, and perfectly clean. "Wow," respectfully stretched daughter-in-law. "And I took household chemicals with me, wipes for cleaning. I thought we would generalize. I'm telling you that I do not sit idly by. So, dear guests, make yourself comfortable, have a rest." Victoria sighed with relief. "Generalize?" Preparations for New Year's Eve were in full swing. Elizabeth was busy with pie and goose and apples. Amanda was busy chopping salad preparations. The men were busy too. Mickey was melting the sauna and Mark was putting kebabs on skewers. Only Victoria took no part in the New Year's Eve hustle and bustle. When Elizabeth asked if she could chop up a chicken fillet for the pie, the girl complained about her new rhinestone nail coating. "What if the rhinestones get in the filling?" Victoria complained. The landlady just shrugged her shoulders. When Victoria, dressed after the bath in a very seductive translucent robe, was applying the mask, Amanda whispered to her son, "I'm wildly apologizing, but could your girlfriend dress more modestly?" "Mom, what are you doing?" Mark asked in surprise. "Actually, it's not proper to parade around in such frivolous clothes while being a guest," the mother said unhappily. All right, I'll tell her about it now," obediently replied the boy, who did not want a conflict, especially on such a day. "Vikulia, can I talk to you?" With a gentle smile, he called the girl. "Yes, doll." Victoria smiled back. "Come, let's go and see the bedroom where we will sleep. Do you have music?" she asked Elizabeth. What about it? The old woman smiled. Here is a TV. There are enough channels. I don't know what kind of music you like, but I think you'll find something. The girl began to change channel after channel, and when she finally found the right music, she set the volume to the highest setting and began to wriggle in some unthinkable dance. Frankly speaking, Mark caught himself thinking that he was uncomfortable for his girlfriend. Of course, they had been to the clubs many times, and Victoria was rocking out to the fullest. But as it turned out, what is beautiful on the dance floor of a nightclub, completely inappropriate in a cozy country house? Mark, you should go to the club, Grandma suggested. There's a New Year's program and disco there tonight. Why? He thought. That's an option too. Grandma wants to communicate with her parents, and under such loud music it is unrealistic. Besides, it was interesting for the guy to visit the village disco. His friend Nicola had traveled to his grandmother's village many times and assured that there are often fights there. What do they fight about? Mark asked then. I don't think they care what they fight about, Slava grinned. They fight about territory, or about girls, or about their little sister. They find something to fight about. And the most interesting thing is that 5 minutes after the fight, everyone loves and respects each other again. I think it's entertaining, Mark thought. At least he thought so when he was drunk. He walked resolutely over to Victoria, put his arm around her waist, and shouted through the music. I have a proposition for you. What? She shouted. Mark took the remote control and turning the music down said, Let's go to the disco. Are there any discos here? Victoria asked in surprise. Girl, smiled Elizaveta, we have a village here, not a remote taiga. I, because of my age, did not have a chance to visit a disco, but I think it is not much different from your city clubs. Doesn't it matter where you kick your feet? The argument seemed weighty to the girl, and she nodded favorably. I need to change, Victoria said, and ran off to the bedroom. When she returned, she was wearing a short silver dress, a mink coat to match, and black suede boots. Her hair was loose. How did you like me? Victoria turned to Mark. As always, great, he said sincerely, and for the sake of persuasiveness he stuck out his thumb, and the young people departed. Where are my 20 years? Commented Mickey, pouring a brandy. Who's the girl? Elizabeth asked. From the university, she shrugged her shoulders. Honestly, I didn't know. He has a lot of girls like that, but this one is hooked on Mark. She's beautiful, of course, spectacular, but she's got no brains. Oh, come on, Amanda, her mother-in-law grinned. She's at an age when you can afford the luxury of not having a brain. If you don't have brains at 30, you're in trouble. The spouses laughed loudly, and the family continued. Victoria remarked as they approached the club, which was decorated with many garlands. There were garlands on the trees that grew nearby. I guess so, Mark agreed. When they entered the club, a man and a woman dressed in national costumes invited them to sing a song or tell a poem. A fly landed on the jam. That's the whole poem. Mark recited it and theatrically waved his hands. The woman looked expectantly at Victoria, and the latter, reluctantly at first, began to sing Roxette's song, which had become the soundtrack to the movie Pretty Woman. The girl's voice sounded stronger and more confident, and Mark was proud to notice how people were coming to them. Victoria liked to sing in English, which she mastered perfectly, so she had no equal in karaoke bars. When Victoria finished singing, the tipsy villagers applauded. A man in a suit handed the girl a chocolate bar and a bottle of champagne, after which she and Mark went to the dance hall. Victoria gave a victory cry, and running into the center of the dance floor, continued dancing. Mark didn't feel like dancing. He propped himself against the wall and from time to time supported his beloved with encouraging looks and gestures. Indeed, Mark thought, remembering the words of his beloved grandmother, what difference does it make where you kick your feet? Salima, Jenny, Candy, and the rest of the class entered the hall. Who the hell is this bimbo? Candy exclaimed in amazement when she saw a blonde girl in a silver dress and boots dancing. Jenny, on the other hand, realized it as soon as she saw the prince of her dreams standing alone against the wall. The boy was looking at her with admiring glances and gestures. Selena nudged her in the side by Jenny. There he is, that guy I told you about. What do you think of him? I think he's great, huh? Selena looked at the guy and immediately averted her eyes. A guy's just a guy, she shrugged. Typical Major, Selena thought. No, the guy's certainly cute. Candy, you have to tell me, Jenny said pleadingly. But before Candy could answer, the dancing girl shrieked, "I love you all. Happy New Year. Oh, 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 yeehaw." And then their classmate Tom, the first dancer in the village, jumped into the middle of the room and started making incredible moves. The guy extended his hand to the blonde, inviting her to dance, and something began. Tom twisted and spun the girl, bending her almost to the floor, and she obeyed. Some supported the couple with applause in time with the music, others laughed furtively, others danced in the background, not daring to go out to the dancers. Mark quietly watched his lady dancing with a strange guy, but strangely enough, did not feel jealousy. Everything was possible on New Year's Eve. Mark admired Victoria dancing, noting once again how gracefully she moved and how finely she felt the music. And then he saw her. In the middle of a solo dance, a group of young people entered the hall, and the first person who caught Mark's eye was a dark-haired girl with stunning huge eyes, which in the light of the New Year's lights seemed simply witch-like. She looked like a witch, honestly. No, to hell with mythology. At the sight of this beauty, Mark was reminded of Turgenev's young ladies. Perhaps it was the old-fashioned dress with ruffles, which, by the way, did not spoil her at all, but on the contrary, made the girl more feminine. Probably this is a carefully thought-out New Year's image, Mark decided. It's a great look, man. I should give Victoria a hint to get something like that. It's pretty cool, huh? Oh yeah, Victoria. While admiring the strange girl, Mark forgot you was here with Victoria. In fact, Victoria seemed too ordinary to him now. This girl, on the other hand, her beauty was natural without any tuning, which modern girls can't live without. And even assured that these lips, eyelashes, and hair are nothing but a natural gift. Well. For example, Victoria at the very beginning of acquaintance assured Mark that she naturally has such seductive, plump lips. Alas, Victoria's sensual lips turned out to be the result of the excellent work of a beautician, and they looked quite natural. However, for Mark it was that lady's flaw, which is easy to forgive. After all, it's all done for us, the stronger sex, so let's be more lenient, gentlemen, he told the guys when they were relaxing in the sauna, talking about girls. I think that's when Mark shared the secrets of his success. But this girl is a ripe berry, a nymph. Her beauty stirred the imagination more than expensive perfume. Looks like I'll be coming here often now, grinned Mark to himself. And Victoria, whispered an inner voice. What about Victoria? He objected. I promised her nothing. And then he was not sure of Victoria's sincere love. The dance ended, and the hall burst into applause. Don't go, proclaimed the woman in the national costume who stood at the entrance. She handed both dancers a bottle of champagne. I suggest we all drink to that, shouted Tom. What do you think about it, beautiful stranger? I'm all for it, assured Victoria, looking around for Mark. He appeared beside her and, putting his arm around her, asked, You haven't forgotten about me? She kissed Mark's lips defiantly. You didn't forget about me. Your girl hasn't forgotten you. Tom, not without envy, looked at the couple, and Victoria asked him, Well, cowboy, does the invitation still stand? Of course it's still on, assured the boy. The young people, taking Mark and Victoria with them, went outside. In 5 minutes they were laughing and talking about nothing. The liquor was flowing. Why don't you come with us? Some guy clapped Mark on the shoulder. Why stand out in the cold? We can, he answered nonchalantly, noting with satisfaction that there was no fight in sight. Victoria was also in favor. All the way she hung on Mark's arm and chattered away, and he had no choice but to endure heroically. The girl continued her chatter, and Mark looked around furtively for a stranger of unearthly beauty. Maybe he had imagined her? What kind of drunken nonsense is this? He was angry with himself, and looking around, he saw the one he was looking for. The girl was walking along with two friends and smiled serenely, unaware of the passion she had generated in the soul of the major. Victoria was on a roll. She was dancing again, and between dances she was drinking champagne and educating the local girls about beauty and fashion. Jenny took a moment to ask Mark to dance. Victoria frowned, but decided to dance with Tom. I hope it's just as cool here, she said in a slurred voice. Selena looked at Sveka and grinned. She's got a freebie. When the dance was over, Victoria sat down at the table and commanded to who knows who, Aftsund, a bottle of champagne. One of the guys obligingly placed the required bottle in front of her. Thank you, she hiccuped. Now the girl seriously thought she was in a bar. After drinking the champagne, Victoria dropped her head on the table and fell asleep. When Mark saw his girlfriend sleeping at the table, he almost spat in frustration. Unfortunately, it wasn't the first time this had happened, but getting drunk like a pig in unfamiliar company was too much. He looked furtively at the beautiful girl, who he recognized as Selena. In the girl's hands was a glass of champagne, the contents of which, Mark noted, had hardly diminished. Apparently, unlike Victoria, she was indifferent to alcohol. "Guys, I'm sorry," the guy said in an embarrassed tone. Victoria just, overdid it. "Come on." One of the guys waved his hand. I think his name was Steven. "Who wouldn't be? It's a holiday after all." "Yeah," Mark muttered, and without thinking, he picked Victoria up and carried her. It wasn't too far to walk. When Mark and his burden crossed the threshold of his grandmother's house, he was relieved to find that everyone was already asleep. Pulling Victoria's boots and dress off, Mark lay down beside her and fell asleep instantly. However, before disappearing into the arms of Morpheus, the guy suddenly saw an unrealistically beautiful face framed by dark curls. The greenish-blue eyes looked serious, but he noticed a slight chuckle. "Selena, you're a heartbreaker," Jenny exclaimed when the girls met at her place the next day. "What are you talking about?" Selena didn't understand. "That. Don't tell me you didn't notice how that big boy was eyeing you." "You'll laugh, but I really didn't notice anything," she said, a little confused. "You didn't make it up?" "Well, in theory I could have imagined it," Jenny nodded. "But when we were dancing with him, he was asking about you. So congratulations, my friend, you caught a big fish." "I didn't catch anything," Selena objected. "Did you see the girl he was with? Her boots alone are my annual scholarship." "So what?" her friend snorted. "Boots are not a matter of time, but a beauty like yours is a gift from God. What does she have? Just tuning. And she drinks like a horse." "Drunk or not drunk, with or without tuning, it's probably already decided for several years. His parents probably have it all laid out step by step, when to get married, when to have kids and how many. But he really looked at you and asked you questions." "Looked? Questioned?" Selena grinned. "So what of it? The guy is good looking, notes his worth, and is hardly content with one single girl. But he's not about our honor, unless it's for fun. I don't want that for nothing." "Maybe not," Jenny nodded disappointedly. "Hey, what are you doing?" Selena laughed. "Jenny, I assure you, there's nothing to worry about. Do you know how many of them I saw at the Institute? A car and a small cart. I assure you, they have girls for serious relationships like us." "Well, and all right," cheerfully waved her friend's hand. "When you have your own restaurant, we will choose our own suitors. And the best. By the way, how are things going with the upcoming opening of the restaurant?" Jenny asked with feigned strictness. "It's going great. God willing, I'll get another machine. And I'll be there if Selena winked. Shall we go out?" "We will when I close the session," she said seriously. Jenny could only envy her best friend's determination. "How was the party?" Elizabeth asked. "It was great," exclaimed a pale but cheerful Victoria, and Mark gave her an angry look. "Maybe some champagne," she continued, ignoring her boyfriend's disgruntled face. "That's not a bad idea," Mickey said, and winked at her and added, "With last night's kebab, eh?" After a late breakfast, or rather an afternoon meal with champagne, Mark fell asleep again. The languid Victoria also expressed a desire to take a nap. In the evening and the next day, the young people walked around the village, breathed the country air with pleasure, and could not get enough of it. Mark secretly hoped to meet a beautiful woman with witch's eyes, but alas, January 3, the family walker was going to leave for the city. "Wow, we're out of bread," Elizabeth said, surprised or saddened. "What's the problem?" Mickey wondered. "I'll go to the store." "No, Dad," said Mark. "I'll go myself. On foot. I feel like going for a walk and getting some air before I leave." Victoria was sitting there doing her makeup. Besides, she had to pack her suitcases, so she didn't have time to accompany Mark. Good. What the hell? What if? Mark was a couple of meters away from the store when the heroine of his dreams came out of it. Shit, what's her name? He thought frantically, and with excitement, he couldn't remember. As luck would have it, nothing clever came to mind, so Mark rattled on. "Hello, nymph." "Hello," the girl replied in an even voice. "May I come in?" "Oh, yes, of course," Mark muttered, and stepped aside to let her pass. So much for the conversation. He thought with annoyance and almost howled at his own stupidity. There was nothing to do. He had to go to the store. When Mark returned, Victoria was already in full dress. She was wearing a burgundy down jacket with a rich collar and black slim pants. The girl's hair was tucked under a stylish chama cap. And that would be all right, Mark thought with slight irritation. But how could I delicately hint to Victoria that platinum hair and dark maroon lipstick were not the best combination in the world? Remembering what he'd said to the guys in the sauna, Mark tried to keep his irritation at bay. It worked, I should say, but unfortunately, not for long. Why am I picking on you? He asked himself. The answer came by itself. But what to do with it? The meeting at the store amused Selena. She probably wouldn't tell anyone about it, not even Guinea. I'd even say her last, the girl thought with a slight chuckle. She'll just start fantasizing again. So I'll keep quiet like a partisan. On this warm and snowy January morning, Selena ran to the store for groceries. The ticket for the evening flight to the regional center had already been taken. Now it was a matter of provisions for a week. Who would have thought that this major would condescend to their village store? Why did I start to snicker? The girl said to herself. Maybe the grandmother had run out of bread, salt, or matches, and he didn't seem like a bad guy. Not like his swaggering girl. What's my business though? 6 months later. In pursuit of her dream, Selena enrolled in a business elective. Chronic fatigue became a constant companion of the girl. For 6 months, Selena managed to go home only 4 times. However, she did not think to be discouraged, much less give up. A couple of times she was visited by Jenny, who studied in the district center. That's what I mean, a city, her friend exclaimed enthusiastically. Tell me, where can you get a grade? Where do you go on vacation? Yes, and I do not really see the city, Selena admitted. Study and electives are all my entertainment. Jenny shook her head. Don't you get any rest at all? Not that I don't, but I don't have enough time. Well, I'll rest during the summer vacation. No, stretched a friend. We have not seen you how long? Exactly, 2 months. So the question of where to have a good time is still open. But I really don't know, Selena said. The only place I know is a restaurant near the city park, where we celebrated the end of the winter session. Not counting, of course, cafes and eateries. Now you say you don't know anything. Let's go to that restaurant of yours. You're so quick, Selena laughed. You have to make a reservation in advance. So sorry, friend, the restaurant will be another time. Got it, Jenny nodded. Cafe then? Oh, okay, let it be the cafe. Selena realized that her friend was not so easy to get rid of and did not argue. She didn't really want to. And really, how much can one chew on the ground of science? That day the girls had a great time at the cafe, and the next morning her friend left. Jenny never once mentioned the boy major, the grandson of the grandmother from the very beautiful house, which looked like a fairy tale, and Selena caught herself thinking that she felt a slight prick of disappointment. Just a slight prick, but still. It was the end of May, on the eve of the summer session, and then, having passed a few credits automatic, Selena once again bought herself a few days at home. And oh, a miracle, she came home. Here is my village, here is my home. Joyfully thought the girl and realized that one more second and she will cry. Selena suddenly seized all-consuming love for her native land, and it was a very strong feeling. She decided not to tell her family about her arrival. Let it be a surprise. The time was approaching evening, so the whole family should be gathered, and so it was. Selena, Mom shook her hands. Sarah was hanging laundry in the yard. Husband, she called out to her husband, who was in the garage working on his car. Look who's here. Selena, exclaimed the father. Why did you call? I would have picked you up from the bus station. I wanted to surprise you, she smiled. Well, you've succeeded, Sarah said. I just made dinner. Even and Veronica will be back soon, and we'll sit down to dinner. But if you're really hungry, you can eat now. No, I'll wait. Where are they? I sent them to the store. Here they are, by the way. Hearing her brother and sister's voices, Selena smiled. God, how she missed them all. The younger ones rushed toward her sister, and Selena's nose pinched suspiciously. It seemed that seeing her family so infrequently had made her sentimental. Come on, let's go to dinner, Sarah said with a smile, proud to see how attached her children were to each other. Back in high school, Selena had grown to love her morning walks. She liked to watch everything around her wake up and hear such familiar and ordinary, but familiar sounds. She walked around the village, secretly hoping to meet a handsome major, but it seemed that he was not here. Why should she be surprised? He must be a student, and now the session. The day before leaving, the girl walked through the forest, then came to the river. At first she wanted to swim, but after touching the water, she changed her mind. It was very cold. It would be better to go to the river in the afternoon, when the water would warm up. Selena walked towards the village, inhaling the scents of grass and flowers with pleasure. Suddenly she noticed something colorful in the grass, and when the girl came closer, she froze with horror. In the grass lay an unfamiliar old woman in a colorful summer suit. Is she alive? Thought Selena, and overcoming her fear, touched the lying woman. Having made sure that the old woman was alive, the girl began to think how to help her. Having patted herself in the pockets of the sports suit, Selena was disappointed to find that she had left her cell phone at home. Even the ambulance cannot call, thought the girl in despair, but she had to get the poor thing to the village somehow. Fortunately, at a closer look at the woman of advanced age turned out to be slim, which greatly simplified the task. Only we are not talking about a bag of groceries and the village, as Selena estimated, 1.5 kilometers. But there was nothing to do. When she started to lift the woman, she suddenly groaned and slowly opened her eyes. "Where am I?" she whispered. "Outside the village," Selena answered quietly. "Can you walk?" "I'll try," the old woman smiled weakly. "Good," the girl said with relief. "Now I'll take you under my arm, and we'll waddle together somehow. Where do you live?" "I'm 3, murmured the poor woman. "That's the second street." "That's the little house," Selena realized. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Do you need medical attention?" No, the old woman assured her. "I'm going to lie down, take a pill, and you'll be fine." "Are you sure?" I'm sure. It's just that my blood pressure was high this morning, and I, the old fool, was carried away for a walk, and it's an early day." As they approached the house, the old lady said, "Sweetheart, be a friend, take the key out of my pocket, because something hands do not obey." Selena led the woman to the bed and helped her lie down. "What pill should I give you?" she asked. "Here, for blood pressure. They're on the table. And some water. What's your name, beautiful?" "My name is Selena," the girl replied. "Well, I'm Elizabeth. Let's get acquainted. I haven't seen you before. How long have you lived here?" "Since I was a child," Selena smiled. She liked the old woman very much. "It's just that I study at the regional institute and rarely come home," she explained. "And what kind of institute, if it's not a secret?" "Institute of Food Industry. I'm finishing my first year." "Great," nodded the old woman. "Would you like some tea?" "Oh, is it okay that I'm on a first-name basis?" "I'm fine." "Do you like studying?" asked the landlady at home. "Very much," Selena answered eagerly. "I always like study, even at school." "Good for you," Elizabeth nodded with a smile. "It's good to like it. So how about some tea?" "No, thank you," her savior politely declined. "I need to go home to prepare for the session." "Well, it's the right thing to do. Come to my place tonight." "Well, except for a little while. I'm leaving early tomorrow morning. I have an exam the day after tomorrow." "What a problem." The older woman snorted, and Selena noted with satisfaction that she was feeling better. "Tonight my grandson will come to me. He'll take you with a breeze. He's from the region too, so there's no need to get up at dawn. Come on over. I'll bake a cake and introduce you to my grandson. By the way, he's finishing his 4th year. He's going to be an economist." "What a naughty boy." The girl smiled involuntarily. Naughty. A common word, but the old woman said it with such love, which seemed to be enough for 10 people. "Come." Elizabeth's voice had a note of pleading in it. Light, almost imperceptible, but still. She must be bored alone, especially in the evenings, came the thought. It seemed to be the kind of thing where having strangers in the house was an opportunity to feel that you weren't alone. Well, how can you say no to that? After that, and also, Duddy, thought Selena. A lonely old woman invited me to visit, so why not come? Now the girl realized that she was fooling herself. What boredom is there to talk about if her grandson is coming to Elizabeth today? Her thoughts were confused, her excitement growing and preventing her from giving a coherent answer. What's there to think about? Of course Selena's coming. Just because she likes this woman. What's this major got to do with it? She doesn't even remember his name. And just as Selena opened her mouth to reply, the old woman unknowingly gave her a powerful argument. "Well, I have to thank you somehow." "Come on," the girl smiled modestly. "In my place, anyone would do so. We still have some kind-hearted people here." "That's right," Elizabeth replied seriously. "Not like in the city. Although, even there, no, but meat. Well, God be with him. It doesn't change anything. You helped me, so I'll thank you." "Okay, I'll be there for sure." "What time?" "About 7 o'clock. "Elizabeth, can I come with a friend?" Selena asked, realizing that she would be uncomfortable without the support of her loyal Ginny. "Of course you can." The old woman smiled, and the girl realized that her thinking was right. The old woman obviously wanted a real holiday, and not an ordinary meeting with her grandson, for whom, perhaps, visits to his grandmother is nothing more than an obligation. "Are you making conclusions out of nothing again?" chided Selena. Sometimes she thought back to that meeting at the store. Before her eyes stood the confused face of the major. However, his words, "Hello, nymph," crashed into memory even more firmly. Elizabeth looked after the girl and thought, "That's the kind of girl I'd like to see as my grandson's wife." When she heard about Elizabeth's upcoming visit, Ginny was as excited as a little girl. "Of course, I have nothing to look forward to, but at least I'll get to see how a great and bright love is born." Jeannie, what? Don't talk to me about social distinctions and all that crap. You didn't find yourself in a garbage dump either. You're beautiful, you're smart, you'll get a bit education. Any man would be honored to court you. You don't know your worth. "And what is my price?" Selena asked with a grin. "High, you bet. More expensive than that moral freak he was here with on New Year's Eve." Well, she doubted it. "You don't understand anything. I wish I had your looks," Ginny said dreamily. "But alas. So, we'll work with what we have." "Selena, don't be offended. You're a very, very beautiful girl, but you dress kind of old-fashioned. You showed." Selena raised her hand in warning. "I'm fine," she said. "And besides, I'm not going on a date." "But I just wanted to." "What's best?" Selena interrupted with a smile. "I'm sure you do. But you know, Ginny, I don't think this guy's going to be surprised by fancy things. I mean, he's seen enough of it to last a lifetime." "You think so?" "I know." After New Year's Eve, Mark went to his grandmother's house several times. He walked around the village often and for a long time, hoping to meet a nymph with amazing eyes, but it never happened. There were also attempts to find out from his grandmother, but Elizabeth didn't know any of the young people. In the end, Mark decided that she wasn't from around here. And where to find her now? He thought confusedly. The guy persuaded himself to accept it. However, his soul desperately protested. Mark confidently drove his sports car and thought about the mysterious beauty. "Maybe we should hire a private detective," he thought. "I know her name is Selena and she either comes to this village or lives here." Why? For a private detective, that's not a small thing. The idea cheered him up a bit, and he drove up to the village in a more upbeat mood. "We'll get through this." Before leaving the house, Mark called his grandmother and she said she had invited guests. Probably some old ladies, thought the boy. However, driving up to his grandmother's house, Mark realized not without pleasure that it was not so. At a table in the gazebo sat two very young girls, and one of them was the very beauty he had already despaired of finding. And when Mark approached them, he remembered the other girl, the one he had danced with at the New Year's Eve party in a random company. "Hello, lovely ladies," he said cheerfully. "Mark," Elizabeth exclaimed excitedly, hugging her grandson. "Well, come on. Throw your bags and come to us." Dinner went merrily. Elizabeth asked if Mark could take Selena to town, to which he replied, "No problem. Are you also from the regional center? I study there." "And where, if not a secret?" "Not a secret," laughed Selena. "At the Institute of Food Industry." "Oh, seriously? Dreaming of a big academic career?" "Well, why do you want an academic career? I have other plans." "She wants to open her own restaurant," Jeannie said. "A restaurant is good." Mark nodded. "By the way, my parents have 2 restaurants." "You're a braggart," Elizabeth said fondly. "Jump into the cellar and get my specialty Naluka." "And your blood pressure?" doubtfully asked the grandson. "So, do not argue. With my blood pressure, I'll somehow deal with myself, and I don't have good company every day. Here I sit now with you young people, and I am getting younger myself." Ah, those were the days. That's it, go now. After the liquor, the old woman dried off and went to bed. Jenny remembered she had a date and said goodbye to. Selena wanted to go with her, but Mark said, "Don't go?" The girl looked at her in amazement. From her eyes, Mark realized that she was about to object and hurriedly added, "Please." Selena obediently lowered herself onto the bench and after an awkward silence said, "I'll help clear the table." "Why? We're sitting so well. Maybe some more liqueur?" Mark suggested. The girl shrugged her shoulders and said, "Actually, I don't drink." "I believe you. So I don't drink. I just have a drink. Sometimes." Selena suddenly remembered how drunk on New Year's Eve his friend and grinned. A second later she realized with horror that she was laughing out loud. "I'm sorry," she said to Mark, still laughing. But he just waved his hand, wiping away her tears. And so they continued to laugh. "You know," laughed the guy, "from the outside you'd think you and I had smoked some of that stuff." "Yeah," Selena nodded. "But what isn't," Mark said, finally getting over his laughter. "I don't mean it. I'd like some of my grandmother's liqueur though. How are you?" "Ah, come on." The young people chatted about everything and nothing, without noticing how they had drunk the liqueur. "It's getting late," Selena remarked, "and I have to study for the session tomorrow." "Are your parents strict at home?" Mark continued. "Not without that." She smiled and waved her hands playfully. "I'm still underage, after all." "Still underage?" "Yeah, I'll be 18 in August." "Well, you have to do it," Mark sighed. "Come on, I'll walk you out." They reached Selena's house, and the boy whispered, "You know, Selena, and I also have a dream." "And what's that?" The girl was curious. "To kiss a nymph." Before Selena knew it, the guy was already kissing her passionately, awakening in her soul such feelings that she had never suspected before. "I hope that under this apple tree there is no older brother who will challenge me to a duel," smiled Mark. "No, my older brother is in the army," answered Selena, and at that moment her amazing eyes shone much brighter than diamonds. "Well, thank goodness. But there's a younger one," she said slyly. "There you are. He's already asleep." Mark pulled the girl to him again. She entered the house and sat down on the bed. After a minute, the happy smile was replaced by a pensive expression on her face. "I wonder what he has now with that blonde," thought Selena. Deciding that she'd better get this handsome guy out of her head, the girl went to bed. Near lunchtime, when Selena was studying chemistry, a dog barked furiously in the yard. Sarah looked out the window and, smiling slyly, said, "Isn't that for you?" "Who?" Selena asked, already knowing the answer to the question. "A handsome young man with flowers." The girl looked out the window and saw Mark. He was holding a bouquet of wildflowers. "What are you doing?" the mother asked mockingly. "Invite the gentleman into the house." "He's not." Selena didn't have time to finish. Mark was already standing in the doorway, and behind him stood his smiling father. Nikolai stuck his thumb up and winked at his daughter, which immediately made her blush. "I picked some flowers," Mark muttered. "In the grove." His wet slates and the edges of his Bermudas spoke more eloquently than any words could. Selena was touched. "I wish I hadn't been thinking about that girl." "I hope you like it," he smiled, handing her the flowers that smelled like the forest. "Thank you very much. Very beautiful bouquet." Selena thanked him sincerely. "Well, invite your beau to the table," invited Sarah with a smile. "Mark and I agreed that he would take me to the dormitory," said the girl to her parents. "He probably needs to give money for gasoline?" Nikolai asked. "No, what are you? Nothing is needed," shook his head Mark. "Well, without tea and pancakes, we will not let you go," Sarah said resolutely. Mark picked up Selena in the afternoon. When the girl made an attempt to get into the back seat, he asked in surprise, "What are you doing?" "Get in the front." Selena shrugged, but complied. For about 5 minutes they drove in silence. "Did I offend you in some way?" Mark asked. "Why would you say that?" "Well, just yesterday it seemed to me." "And what did it seem to you, I wonder?" Selena grinned mirthfully. "Well, we drank liqueur, well, kissed. It's just everyday stuff." "Is that what you call it?" You could hear the resentment in the guy's voice. "That's weird." "What's weird?" "Well, you seem different to me." "You've seen too much," she remarked. Mark sighed. "Don't get them, those girls. They're all the same. whether it's a young socialite from a wealthy family or an ordinary country girl. Well, what do they all want? What? Well, the Walker here is not used to giving up. Here's the thing, Selena, he said. I don't know what I've done wrong, but I'm ready to make it right. I just wish I knew how to do it. Can you tell me? Do you ask your girlfriend these questions too? To be honest, I haven't had to, Mark replied, concentrating on the turn. As he rounded the bend, he added, by the way, I don't have a girlfriend right now. Why is that? Well, that's just the way it is. People break up sometimes. Mark broke up with Victoria 2 months ago. A month before the relationship broke up, it became clear to him that the girl had a drinking problem. He offered Victoria treatment, but she did not want to hear about it. And when the blonde beauty got drunk, he said that he, Mark, can heal her only with his love. Thus, Victoria hinted that she wanted to marry him. Well, no. One day, Mark realized that he had had enough. The guy didn't beat around the bush and told Victoria they were breaking up. She started babbling something about saving her soul, but Mark was adamant. God knows, he tried to help her, but his desire alone was not enough. Then a succession of beautiful but faceless girls, relationships with whom were initially doomed to failure. None of them managed to push out of Mark's mind the dark-haired, green-eyed sorceress who was riding in the car with him and resenting for whatever reason. Yes, this was not how he saw the scenario of his relationship with the beautiful nymph named Selena. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you, she said. You didn't. It's just that I thought. Again? Selena asked and burst out laughing. Mark couldn't help it either, and then he pulled over to the side of the road, turned off the car, and they kissed for a long time. Young people could not get enough of each other. The next day, Selena passed her exam with an excellent, and Mark took her to a restaurant owned by their family. The waiter brought more and more dishes. Mark went to the musician and, after a whisper with him, returned to the table and said, "Shall we dance?" The girl nodded with a smile. After the session, Mark and Selena went to the village. Their romance flared up with renewed vigor. The beautiful nature and stupefying air, flavored with the aroma of flowers and cut grass, did their job. Their first night was unforgettable. The lovers went to the river, walked through the woods and fields, and it seemed to Mark that he had fallen into a fairy tale. He was sure, a beautiful face against a background of gorgeous scenery can have nothing to do with reality. Elizabeth was delighted. Mark's parents also found their son's new girlfriend very nice. That's what I mean, Amanda said approvingly. She's both beautiful and smart. In their relationship with Selena, Mickey and Amanda noticed another undeniable advantage. Mark became more serious and learned to reason like a grown man, not a capricious boy. He began to devote more time to his studies, but Selena's parents are seriously worried about their daughter. Are you sure this young man won't hurt you? Sarah asked one day. Mom, now I just feel good with him, the girl replied with a smile. And what will happen next? Let's not guess. The woman shook her head. She didn't recognize her sensible daughter. Although, what's so surprising? Where is love and where is prudence? Everyone falls in love after all. So why was Selena any worse than the others? And yet Sarah's mind was troubled. Selena's a real beauty, but this Mark is a different kind of man. A major. Her daughter had assured her that Mark's grandmother and parents had accepted her well. Maybe they did, but they wouldn't be thrilled if the kids wanted to formalize their relationship. Why am I getting so worked up? Thought Sarah. They're both committed to their studies, and who knows? Maybe they'll break up, as they often do when they're young. We'll see. The school year began, and Selena left for the city. A fancy sports car pulled up to the porch of the dormitory, and everyone nearby froze with curiosity. Mark walked around the car, opened the door, and when Selena stepped out of the car, the people began to murmur. Wow, she's got it covered. No wonder, with such a beauty. Oh, come on, she'll take her time and leave her. It's a bad hat. Don't be jealous, you won't get one. While the inhabitants of the dormitory self-consciously scratching their tongues, Mark took out of the trunk of a large sports bag and a bag, closed the trunk, and headed for the entrance. Selena walked next to him lightly. Everyone who knew her noted how she looked better. Selena enjoyed love, but did not forget about her studies. And in mid-September, the girl was forced to come down to earth. One day at a lecture, she felt nauseous. For about 5 minutes she hoped that it would pass, but the nausea only intensified. The girl raised her hand, and after waiting for the assistant professor to pay attention to her, she asked permission to leave. "Barbara, I'm going to go to the dorm to lie down for a while," Selena told her classmate. "I don't feel well. It's probably my stomach." "Are you sure it's your stomach?" Barbara asked, looking at her carefully. "Well, Selena, are you completely nuts?" exclaimed the classmate. "What stomach? You need to buy a test." "What test?" "What kind of test?" "The one that's most likely to show 2 stripes." Selena put her cold palms on her burning cheeks and mumbled, "Do you think?" "Yes, I'm sure of it. Go already. I'll warn you that you won't be there. Only with the test, do not delay." The girl gloomily wandered towards the dormitory, but remembered that there was a pharmacy across the street. So what to wait for? Selena bought the test and quickly went to the dormitory. Without delay, she took the test. 2 stripes. The girl sank down on a chair in exhaustion and wrapped her arms around her head. This was the downside of romance. What do you want to do now? No, Selena had no intention of getting rid of the child, but she didn't want to think how Mark would feel about it. After all, he had said many times that first study and work, and then family and children. And how, in fact, were her own plans for life different? That's just it, nothing. But there's already a child. So it looks like she'll have to wait a while to realize her dream. "Mark, are you free today?" Selena asked. "Well, yes." After a short thought, he answered. "You sound a little tense. Is something wrong?" "Something's wrong," she sighed. "I'll pick you up at 5, okay?" "Yeah, that's fine." The girl could hardly wait for the evening. Mark, as promised, arrived at 5 sharp. He was a little pensive, which only made her more apprehensive. "So what's wrong?" Mark asked. "Mark, I'm pregnant," Selena said without any preamble. "What? You've heard. Are you sure?" the guy asked. "I took a test and it showed 2 stripes," Selena replied, tears glistening in her eyes. "What are you going to do?" "Mark, I'm not going to get rid of the baby," she said hastily, sensing something wrong. "It's out of the question." "Selena." "Selena what?" The girl felt like she was about to become hysterical, but she mustered all her willpower. She couldn't afford to go along with her negative emotions. After all, Selena wasn't alone anymore. "But you had so many plans," Mark said, choosing his words carefully, for he understood her state of mind. "Would you just give up on him?" "Well, why should I? I'll just postpone them for a while. I'm not the first. I'm not the last. What are my years?" Selena tried to speak calmly, but her voice was still hysterical. "I see," he said quietly. "I see you've made up your mind." "I don't see any other solution," Selena said firmly. "Mark, I'm not insisting on marriage. In fact, if it comes to that, I don't insist on anything. I can manage without you." "Don't make a monster out of me," Mark grinned. "I'll talk to my parents tonight." "I'll talk to my parents tonight." "Selena, I'm sorry. I have to get ready for the seminar. I'll call you tomorrow." "Okay, bye." Not happy, Selena concluded. "What about me?" "Neither was I. But what's done is done." Mark was driving home, and a volcano was raging in his soul. What can be said, he had not expected this turn of events. Although one had to assume that Selena, due to her inexperience, hadn't thought of the consequences. But that's Selena. He's the good one. Mark didn't even think of keeping the news from Mickey and Amanda. Selena would have to explain herself to her ancestors, and they would definitely tell her grandmother. Besides, Mark wasn't going to shirk his responsibility, though he wasn't happy about it, and neither was Selena. And yet, she had decided to keep the child, which was predictable. Mark was tuning in for a difficult conversation with his parents, and his heart was scratching. The parents would probably be unhappy. So what now? The boy sighed heavily. He had grown cold towards Selena lately and was thinking of ending the relationship. This summer, against the backdrop of rural landscapes, she seemed nymph, forest sorceress, fairy from a fairy tale. In the city before him appeared, ordinary, albeit very beautiful, rural simple woman in old-fashioned clothes. The latter was especially depressing. The other day Mark invited his beloved to a club. When he picked Selena up at the dormitory, she came out in a black dress below the knees, in small white polka dots and with a puffy bow on her chest. Over the dress was worn some grandmother's coat of unknown color. The image was completed by boots on solid soles. "Well, how you like me?" the girl asked coquettishly, and Mark did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Selena," he said, "you are, of course, as beautiful as ever. But plans have changed." At that moment, Mark hated himself desperately. But he couldn't help it. After all, his friends would be laughing. Is it really true that you can take a girl out of a village, but you can never take a village out of a girl? Anyway, they didn't go to any nightclub that day, but just sat in a cafe. So Mark would have to become a recluse from now on. And all because his girlfriend doesn't know how to dress and doesn't seem to be trying to learn. Mark didn't even notice that he was near the house. I'm going to give up, he thought unhappily. You can't breathe before you die. Hello, he mumbled as he crossed the threshold of the house. Did something happen? Amanda asked, noticing the look on her son's face. Yeah, he replied succinctly, is Daddy home? At home, she nodded warily. Good, nodded back at her son. I need to talk to you. What was it you wanted to talk to us about? Mickey asked when the family was all together. Mom, Dad, I won't start at the beginning. Selena's pregnant. Right, said the father. What's next? What's next? That's what I'm asking. What's next? I hope you're ready to take responsibility for what happened. I am, nodded Mark, doomed. Good for you. You're going to work in one of the restaurants as an administrator, and you won't have to drop out of school, especially since this year you are defending, and then I'll take you on as a partner. Why? Everything is not so bad, thought Mark. A couple of days later, the future parents filed a statement in the registry office, and at the weekend all together went to the village. When Sarah learned of her daughter's pregnancy, she was not on her face. Come on, Sarah, Elizabeth exhorted her. Everything will be all right. Mark won't hurt our little girl. And Mickey and Amanda have taken to her well. The bride's mother smiled faintly and sighed furtively. Everything seemed fine from the outside, but for some reason her mother's heart whimpered. Dreams, dreams, where is your sweetness? Selena recited aloud and added in a low voice, the dreams are gone. What's left is the grossness. She flipped the frying chops and sat down on a chair to catch her breath. And so it was day in and day out. Laundry, cooking, kindergarten. It is only in the TV series Beautiful Wedding becomes a spectacular final chord. In life, it becomes the beginning, and what happens next is not always beautiful. When Mary was 2 years old, the young mother came out of sabbatical leave. She registered her daughter in kindergarten, and the next day she gathered in the dean's office. Having learned about this, Mark insisted that his wife transfer to the correspondence department. After thinking about it, Selena agreed. At first, she was satisfied. The house was always hot food, perfect cleanliness, and the young mistress, having seen her husband off to work and her daughter off to kindergarten, and a good night's sleep, Selena finished driving courses and got her license. On the occasion of the successful completion of the course, Mark gave her a new foreign small car, and now Selena herself picked up Maria from kindergarten. On the way home, she stopped at the supermarket. Such an algorithm of actions more than satisfied her. But over time, Selena came to the disappointing conclusion that a non-working woman, shortening her days at the stove, sooner or later turns into a domestic clutches. Once at one of the social events, she went out on the balcony for some fresh air and heard a conversation between two ladies. Mark's wife is such a beautiful woman, but she dresses like a collective farmer, said the first. When Selena listened, she was unpleasantly surprised. The voice belonged to Julia, the wife of Nicola, a friend of Mark's, and she'd welcomed this person as her own. Where does she get this nightmare? From her grandmother's trunk. And she had gotten fat lately, answered a second female voice, unknown to her. And she's still young. How can you not take care of yourself? What are you talking about? Julia grinned. I remember they invited us to the wedding anniversary, so Selena came out in some shabby dress and the whole evening talking about children's constipation and gas. How awful. The ladies giggled disgustedly and Selena almost burst into tears. God, what has her life become? It would seem that not so long ago Selena was pretty and full of ambitious plans. And now what? Home, kindergarten, and mass events that she would never go to again. After making sure that the chots were ready, Selena went to change her clothes. Time to go to daycare to pick up Maria. She'll make the side dish later. Mommy, do pigs drink? The little girl asked as Selena put her in the child seat of her car. Why do you think so? The young woman asked in surprise. You told Daddy that he got drunk as a pig again, Maria explained. Yes, it would be funny if it weren't so sad, Selena thought. Alas, it happened. And the answer was always the same. We were celebrating the deal. And when she, unable to stand it, once pointed out that it was not necessary to get drunk to the pig squeal she heard. What do you know, village? Well, now he's shown his true colors, Selena thought. Mama, she heard Maria's voice, and waking up from her unpleasant memories, realized that the girl was waiting for an answer from her. I wish I knew what to say to a 3-year-old child. No, Maria. Pigs don't drink, Selena replied. It's just that when a person does a bad thing, they're called a pig. But Daddy and I talked, and he won't do it again. He won't, nodded her daughter cheerfully. On the way home, Selena called her husband. Mark, I fried some chops, and I don't know what to make with them, rice or potatoes? And there was a clear displeasure in her husband's voice. That's what I'm asking. What should I make as a side dish? You can cook whatever you want. Mark grumbled angrily and switched off. Wife? Angela asked, resting her head on Mark's shoulder. Wife, he nodded. What did she want? Did she want to know if I should have chops for dinner, rice or potatoes? Really? Pretty much. What about you? What about me? What do you want your chops with? Angela mockingly asked. You know what, Angie? Screw the chops. I'm staying. Really? The mistress rejoiced. True, confirmed Mark, disconnecting the phone. Selena didn't sleep a wink all night. She called all the hospitals and morgues, but the fact that Mark had not been admitted, there was little consolation. What could have happened to him? Mommy, isn't Daddy taking me to daycare today? Maria asked what she saw her mother put him on her jacket. No kidding. Daddy has a lot of work, and he's gone to another city, Selena answered, trying hard not to cry. Mark showed up at 9 in the morning, when the wife had already returned home. Yes, but why isn't he at work? He took a vacation, Mark muttered. Is it hard when you're hungover? Selena asked in a mocking and sympathetic tone. That too, he was not embarrassed in the least, but he had an excuse. And what was the occasion? Mark nodded approvingly. And the reason is that I'm leaving you. She'd been waiting for that. No, really. Then what's that unpleasant chill in your stomach? Why don't you ask me why? Well, what's the reason? Selena asked apathetically. The wild desire for sleep had done its job. It would hurt her later. And the reason is that I'm sick of you. You're a village, that's what you are. It's a shame to appear in decent society with you. Half-drunk Mark raged. Once I fell in love with a beautiful girl, and now what? A peasant girl. Mark went to the closet and took out a suitcase. So some of the things I'll take now, and the rest I'll pick up later, he muttered, stacking shirts, jackets, and pullovers. Selena watched her husband and couldn't believe this was happening to them. It had all started so beautifully, hadn't it? Mark, she squeezed out of herself, but if you didn't like something, you could have talked to him in a human way. Why did you have to bring it to this? I was up all night worrying. I thought something had happened to you. He had nothing to say. He knew Selena was right. Mark went to the kitchen and, taking a carafe of water from the refrigerator, began to drink greedily straight from the neck. God knows he didn't want to. But should Maria and I vacate the apartment? Selena, tomorrow Saturday. Love, that's right, Selena realized. It's a dangerous symptom, by the way. If a person loses track of the days of the week, it's a sure sign that they've been sitting at home. No, I have to transfer to a full-time program. When are you coming? Even today. That'd be great. It was only now that Selena realized how much she missed her friend. I'll take the next bus out. Jenny shrugged her shoulders as they tucked Maria in, drank wine, and ate a good piece of delicious knuckle steak. Negative experiences are also experiences. Yes, today divorce for many women is, on the contrary, the beginning of a new life. That's what someone who's never been divorced says, Selena said dejectedly. Oh, Selena, what's with the downbeat attitude? Look on the bright side. Now you won't have to work at the stove on another culinary masterpiece for someone who, by the way, didn't appreciate it. You'll start showing up in public, you'll blossom, and you'll see that asshole will be kicking himself for missing out on a woman like you. Yeah, I can't stop thinking about what he said to me. I mean, what Mark said was terrible. But maybe there's some truth to what he said. I mean, you're a million times prettier than those society cats, and you dress like a Soviet-era librarian. Is it really that bad? Selena asked sadly. Jenny exclaimed, feeling that the ice was finally breaking. What should we do? She asked. For starters, go to the hairdresser, she said flatly. If your socialite girlfriends, instead of scratching their tongues, did not bother to advise you a good stylist, I'll take the role of your good fairy. In the morning, Selena was awakened by her friend's voice. Wake up, sleepyhead. We have great things to do. Can I take another hour nap? Okay, you have 5 minutes. Selena, I'm blown away. Jenny exclaimed in amazement. Who is this femme fatale? It's Mom, Maria said importantly. I see it now. This is what a young, beautiful woman should look like. The stylish haircut on her long hair really transformed Selena. Thick, dark bangs highlighted her turquoise eyes, and cut side strands beautifully framed her face, making it more elegant and interesting. While the hairdresser was working on Selena's hair, Jenny looked for a spa salon, but everywhere was busy. There was a problem with the treatments, but that's okay, she said cheerfully. We'll set up a spa at home. And now for shopping. After the procedures, the friends sat down to drink tea. Well, now you are ready to start a career as a businesswoman, said Jenny. What are you talking about? Well, what do you mean? She snorted. Your dream. The restaurant. When was that? Selena grinned sadly. By the way, you promised me the manager's job, Jenny said reproachfully. And now what? Promise me a job and walk away? No, my friend, that's not going to work. What restaurant? With what money? Nothing. I have an idea. It's a small investment, and if it works out, you could make a lot of money. Selena was intrigued, and Jenny's proposal was really worth considering. Her friend suggested starting a catering company. In other words, catering. To begin with, you can offer your cooking in the offices. Jenny outlined the plan. Little by little, we'll rent the place. You cook, I'll find clients. Eventually, we'll have a restaurant. What do you say? What do you think? I like it. Shall we make a deal? Deal. The phrase life begins after divorce no longer seemed to Selena a frivolous judgment of those who had never been divorced. She transferred to the full-time department and now wondered how she could manage to study, cook lunches for the office staff, and deal with the child. At the Institute, Selena has a lot of fans, but she was not ready for a new relationship. After the May holidays, Mark and Selena put the stamps on the dissolution of marriage. I'm sorry if something is wrong, said the ex-spouse. And be happy? By the way, you look beautiful. Thank you, smiled Selena. You be happy too. Tell Maria that I love her very much. I will. This divorce made Mickey and Amanda very sad. They said he couldn't find a better wife than Selena. So it's not fate, said the now ex-sister-in-law with a sad smile. But know that the door of my apartment is always open to you. Yes, I know, Selena, Amanda replied through her tears. And you and Maria should come to visit us more often. Business was booming. The business lunches prepared by Selena were a big hit, and soon they rented a small premises, bought some equipment, and hired 3 assistants. After the summer session, Selena decided to go to the countryside. In the summer, there is a paradise. She managed the work process via Skype and noted with satisfaction that everything was going smoothly. Selena was returning from the store. When she saw Frank, her alcoholic neighbor, on the bench, the young woman thought, well, now he'll start begging for a bottle. Hello, beautiful. He said hello with a smile, showing the remaining 10 teeth. Hello, Uncle Frank. I hear you're a businesswoman. Well, I'm a bit of a businesswoman, but we can do some things, Celine said cheerfully. Selene, I'd like to heal, said the neighbor and hastily added. But don't worry, I'll pay you back. Okay, she smiled and handed Feka a $100 bill. Here. Thank you. He cheered up and, shoving the money into the pocket of his crumpled shorts, ran towards the store. When Selena entered the house, she saw Elizabeth. The older woman's eyes were red and swollen with tears. Her parents were crying as well. What happened? She asked, feeling that something very terrible had happened. Trouble, Selena, Elizabeth moaned. Mickey and Amanda are dead. Selena gasped. How did it happen? She asked in horror. They crashed on an airplane. They were returning from a business trip, the old woman replied and sobbed. The deaths of the Walker businessmen had shocked the town. Mickey and Amanda had done a lot of charity work, and there were many poor people among those who came to see them off. On the way to the church, Selena bought a huge bouquet of roses. When she saw Mark, she approached him. Accept my condolences, Selena said. Thank you, nodded her ex-husband. They love you very much. I know smiled sadly at the young woman, and tears came to her eyes. And I love them very much too. God, I just can't believe it. Grandma's in the hospital, he said quietly. Yeah, I know. Mom called an ambulance. I hope I hope she pulls through this. I hope so too, Mark sighed. The Walker couple bequeathed all their real and personal property, business and other assets in equal shares to their son and granddaughter. In case they died before Maria's majority, they gave Selena the right to manage their daughter's estate until she turned 18. As they felt, Selena thought bitterly at the reading of the will. A week later, she received a call from Mark, saying that he had won a lucrative contract and was flying to Europe. For how long? She asked. 5 years. Wow. Well, maybe you really need a change of scenery now, Selena replied in thought. And most importantly, I won't have to lie to Marie that Dad is away on business. The next 5 years flew by lightning fast. Having defended her diploma, Selena began to work with redoubled vigor. Before she knew it, the young woman had cut the red ribbon at the entrance to the dream restaurant, as she called her brainchild. Elizabeth looked fondly at Selena and remembered how her son and daughter-in-law opened their first restaurant. She managed to recover from their deaths, but the wound was still bleeding. Now Selena often flew to different countries and took master classes from chefs. She was tired, but it was worth the gamble. In addition, Jeannie turned out to be a savvy manager. When the wound from the loss of his parents healed, Mark realized how much he missed the United States. He decided not to tell anyone about his return to his homeland. As soon as he set foot on his native land, Mark wept. You're getting old, brother, he mentally said to himself and headed to the airport building for a coffee. Mark's attention was caught by a gorgeous woman in a fox coat and pillbox hat. The stranger's lips were brightly painted. The woman's face was vaguely familiar to him, but Mark couldn't who she was. Probably some actress or model, he thought, most likely a foreigner. And then he saw his daughter. The girl was running toward the gorgeous stranger screaming, Mommy, I missed you so much. Behind her was a woman, obviously Maria's nanny. Mark's jaw dropped. Sure, Selena had gotten prettier since the divorce, but like this. So much for the countryside. What an idiot I've been. Still not realizing why he was doing this, Mark walked over to his wife and daughter. I missed you too, he said with a smile. Mark? Daddy, did you know Mom was coming? Exclaimed the daughter enthusiastically. Mark, are you back? Selena asked. Yes, I'm back. Selena, maybe this isn't the time or place, but I want to tell you. Anyway, I've been thinking a lot, and I've decided, shit, let's start over. I've been a fool, but I promise I'll make it up to you. You can't fix a broken vase, Selena said thoughtfully, tears streaming down her eyes. But we'll try. Selena, we were young and bad then, but we're older now. Selena really wanted to believe that this time everything would be fine. She also realized that she had loved Mark all these years. Yes, she answered quietly and smiled. They rode in the cab. Mark and Selena gazed wistfully at the stars and thought about the same thing. It seemed to them that Mickey and Amanda were watching them and enjoying themselves.